Oh my.
Who would have thought that 2025, the year end of it, could also mean the end for CBCS? Well, tonight on The Ungraded Truth, we're going to talk about the end of companies and the end of the year. Detective Comics set a record for 1.8 million. Nobody really cares.
Who are annoyed that people are asking them questions, is this book bad? That question didn't exist a year ago.
Somebody's submitting like 25 vintage books and getting 15 9.9s.
We always think, how can it ever get crazier? And then it always does.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the number one show in the universe, The Ungraded Truth, the show that gives the absolute truth about the collectible market. Tonight, I am joined by my co-hosts, as usual, Automatic Comics, 99 Newsstand, and Neo Cards and Comics. Gentlemen, it's been one hell of a year, and we got a lot to recap in today's episode, but how are you all doing this fine evening?
Doing as good as you can hope to be, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little before. It's crazy kind of going back to the year and trying to figure out what happened in the last 12 months. It's like versus like if it was in the prior year, like all this stuff just seems to bleed together.
That I agree with.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
does all bleed together.
Yeah, it's funny because, in tonight's show, for everybody hanging out in the chat, we were kind of going over what the topics were going to be. We were prepping a lot of things. And obviously, there's a lot of big news stories to cover. And we felt like, this being kind of the last show of the year, we kind of felt like we had to do a recap, but we're kind of yo-yo back and forth with topics and talk about the year. And there's a lot to cover in this episode overall. And I want to jump into that. But of course, before we do, we have to give a little shout out to the biggest YouTube channel there is in all of YouTube, which is, of course, is the Ungraded Truth YouTube. Gentlemen, last time we talked about the Ungraded Truth YouTube, this show was at 600 subscribers. Now it is all the way up to 851, a monumental increase. But maybe more important than the rise of the Ungraded Truth YouTube channel, if you click into more links here, you'll happen to find a Spotify link as well, which would bring you over to, yes, that is right, the Ungraded Truth is now on Spotify. And we would like it for all you guys who are fans of the show to hop over to Spotify, give that link a follow. Maybe give it a little bit of a review, unless, of course, your review is poor, which that's impossible because we are, like we always say, the number one show in the world. So, it's pretty cool that we're officially on it, but we would definitely like you guys to hop over, give the channel, the YouTube a sub, give the Spotify a follow. Definitely would help us out. We got to get to 1,000 subscribers. If we get to 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, we're going to do an epic giveaway. What are those prizes going to be? I don't know. Don't ask me now, but it's going to be pretty epic. But gentlemen, what do you think about the rise of our social channels right now?
I think it's incredible. I think we can get to 1,000 before this year ends. I think that'd be an amazing way to end the year. But Swag, thank you for everything that you've done. And it's been a blast. And friends, thank you for hanging out with us every other week and in between. It's been very cool.
Yeah, Swag's
it's unprecedented. That's all I can say.
We're just the talent. We just show up. We have it easy.
Or maybe you guys have the hardest job because you guys have to carry the conversation, which is what we're going to start to do right now. It is 2025, or it's the end of 2025, and there's a lot to talk about. And in prepping the show, I thought about do we want to start at the back end of the year, or do we want to start at the front of this year and kind of go through it? But I kind of didn't want to really bury the lead. I mean, we have the thumbnail with a tombstone of CBCS on it, and I figured that we can talk about this particular story, and that can kind of lead to the broader conversation about PSA altogether in 2025, who, if you guys realize, 2025 is the year that PSA Comics opened their doors. It feels like they've been around for years, but it's kind of easy to forget that they've only been around for 6 months. But let's kind of talk about this head story here, which is PSA parent company Collectors to acquire Beckett, keeping it an independent brand. This is out of New York Times. A huge story hit the collectible hobby just the other weekend. Everybody and their moms was talking about this thing. If you guys don't know, Collectors purchased Beckett, which Beckett is the parent company of CBCS, which, as you guys are all aware, CBCS, the other comic book grading company, which is I guess, number 3 right now, as PSA has entered the market. But, guys, I feel like maybe we don't have to fully kind of recap the story, but maybe we can kind of give some overall thoughts on what you felt like when this news hit the airwaves. How do you guys feel, and what was your reaction to this news? Were you guys surprised about it? And then maybe kind of looking ahead, let's kind of dig in a little bit to what this ultimately means for CBCS. But let me open it up to you guys. What did you think about all this?
So I guess from my perspective, because I'm going to look at it much more from the comic side, Neo will probably have more of a card stance on it, but from comics, my first thought was CGC was elated. I mean, it's just like, to them, that's probably just eliminating, really. I mean, I don't think any of us really believe that those brands are going to stick around all that long. I mean, they maybe, but at best, like, it'll be an SGC type situation where it's a smaller set. But even that, like, what is CBCS? Like, at least SGC, it was like sports cards was like the thing they were known for. With CBCS, there isn't really a thing. It used to be the signatures, the signature verification. So if you could have hung your hat on that, but it's not really anything that you can argue that they do better. There's things people can like more, the cases or whatever, but they don't have that like single thing that's like the big item for them. Like with BGS, at least with the Beckett graded cards, they have black labels. They at least have that.
Yeah.
But with CBCS, they don't. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, assuming this all goes through, because we've heard like there's potentially challenges to it and all that. But assuming it all goes through, I would expect CBCS to basically get absorbed by the PSA Comics grading relatively quickly, just to add their graders in and all that. Because, I mean, from the comments I've seen in my videos and I've seen from other people's videos, it really does seem like this has made people rethink sending books to CBCS. And whether they're going to send them to PSA or CGC, I don't know. But that at least seems to probably even hurt their market even more in the short term.
I agree with that. I mean, I've heard some people say that. I've heard people say that they hope that they preserve Beckett as a brand, and I can understand the reasoning. Like, Beckett has legacy, a lot of history. Like, it's beloved within its community, and they have the black label. And so maybe I'm a believer in that. There's a possibility that Beckett sticks around for a while. I think ultimately even that gets wrapped up. I'm not sure, or what's it called, rolled up? I don't know. But I haven't heard anyone say, and I'm sure there are these conversations going on, but I haven't been a part of them, where someone's enthusiastic about saying, I hope they preserve the CBCS brand. Everyone seems to be on the same page that we're not quite sure what it means for Beckett, but this definitely, at least the assumption is that this definitely means the end of CBCS. Because if you think about it, it's hard. Like you said, you can't really figure what do they do that's unique to the business of grading, and no one can really figure out what would be the reason to keep them around. Like, what is the value proposition? Why put money into CBCS? Why try to restore that brand or maintain it? Maintaining it the way that it is useless. And if you already are developing a new comic book department, a grading department, why would you do anything with CBCS? So it feels like the writing's on the wall. That's kind of what I'm thinking, and it feels like that's what everyone's thinking.
Yeah, I can see them keeping the Beckett brand around. I mean, SGC acquisition is almost 2 years ago, and they're still grading, 30 to 40,000 cards a month, which is down from where they were at, but they're still around. And with the regulatory concerns that Ryan mentioned that's come out, I think that would be more incentive for them to keep the Beckett brand around, even if it's a shell of its former self, just to say like, oh no, look, they still exist, and be able to point at them for a few years. But CBCS is the one, and this was one of the first things that I said when this news came out, was I just don't see how they survive. I don't know that it makes sense for them to survive this. I don't think they were very big to begin with. I think PSA instantly jumped past them the second they started taking submissions. I mean, we joked when Swaggle House and I were at New York Comic Con, they didn't even have a booth this year. And in past years they have, because I've seen them there. And this year they didn't even have a booth at all. I mean, even I've seen them set up at Heroes Con before, and it's just, it's not the most elaborate setup. There's very few people in their line compared to CGC. So I don't even know how many graders they even had on staff, but them losing business from the few people that still submitted to them, that seems pretty rough, because I don't know how much submission volume they were getting in the first place. And from PSA's perspective, It gives them a second location to grade out of if they so choose. If they flip it over to PSA grading, it gives them a few more graders, maybe experienced graders. Everyone, I don't know a ton about CBCS, but I've never really heard a lot of like complaints about their grading. I don't know, Ryan or Manu or Swags, you might be able to speak to that more. But I've never heard like major issues with like, oh, I sent in this and it comes back relatively in the realm of what people thought that it was generally going to be. Maybe that's not the case, but I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really hear complaints about that. I mean, they do still end up having similar issues that CGC has. Like I've seen label swaps, between books in the same submission. I've seen upside down books, but it just happens so much less because they grade like a 50th of the books that CGC grades. And so you just don't hear about it unless you see someone randomly make a post or something. But I mean, they have, everybody's going to have these types of quality control issues, unfortunately. But yeah, I was thinking like from what you said about New York Comic Con, it's just one of those things that almost feels like looking back, like hindsight is 2020. You're like, oh, none of us really knew about this acquisition, but that must have probably been, in the works, they already. And they're just like, why are we even spending money, to send people?
Yeah. I don't know when those decisions started coming down. The whole Beckett thing, basically a year ago, they kind of restructured everything into that collectivist holding company, basically, because Beckett as a brand was kind of tied up, their owners in jail and has a bunch of legal issues with insurance fraud and all sorts of stuff. And it was kind of very convoluted, their corporate structure. So almost a year ago, it was right before Christmas last year, they launched Collectivist, which was Beckett and a Dragon Shield and Southern Hobby under one like little group. And basically the thought was from the day that happened, that was kind of step one of we are going to sell, because it cleaned up a lot of their like back end nonsense to make it easier to sell off the company once that happened. So I assume once they made that transition, then they immediately started probably the fielding offers process. Now, when it got close, when PSA got involved, none of that stuff, none of us will ever know. But
assuming this goes through,
it's going to go through. The letter to the FTC, like it makes great content, but this isn't big enough to get on their radar.
Yeah, well, really quick, I want to bring Manu in here, and I did want to bring up the FTC thing because, in the wake of this acquisition, there was a lot of conversation around, breaking trusts. Is this like acquisition not legal? There were some people calling for FTC to jump into this. You shared this post, Rob, on your Instagram, talking about how Chairman Ferguson is going to make a motion for this. To me, this feels like is sort of signaling as a politician for like, hey, like I'm sort of with people. Like it's a very popular thing to kind of do this because the uproar in the community was so loud. Although I don't really see this actually getting any legs, but kind of where I want to sort of push this, and I don't want to leave this conversation yet, is that we did have the FTC kind of come in, or at least a motion for the FTC to come in with this post right here. But what was interesting about this acquisition is that there were so many grading companies that were not PSA and not Beckett that felt the need to kind of come in and make a statement about this. Here is C3 grading. They came in sort of saying like, this is a bad time for grading, or this is a terrible thing to do. And we at C3 are going to stand for something different. Similarly, we had AGS grading make a statement about this. Recent announcements show how the hobby is changing, And then we even had Steve Eichenbaum, who is the CEO of Certified Collectables Group, who is the parent company of CGC, also making a big statement. And I guess in continuing this conversation, I mean, what do you make of all this as far as like these companies coming out, making statements, this push to not have PSA acquire Collector or PSA acquire Beckett because of the fact that they want the FTC to get involved? I mean, why has there been such an uproar within the community about this acquisition?
I think it's an opportunity to make an uproar about it. I'm not saying that they don't have real opinions and thoughts, but a competing business making a statement about something that's happening is just it's an opportunity for the spotlight, right? This is a hot topic. Everyone's commenting on it. It's kind of the right thing to do to be a part of that conversation. If that's the topic that everyone's searching, if that's the topic that's popping up on all the Collectible Explorer pages, you kind of want to have some part of that conversation. And obviously CGC's take on it, is unique to CGC, and I understand, why they released that statement, and then they went more in depth and took a few more, not shots, but sort of patted themselves on the back in a longer email that Steve Eichenbaum sent out. That's his last name, right? I believe it is. And then it was funny because at the end of that email, he was like, promo code, if you haven't used CGC, you get some money off of your membership, right? So this email went out to everyone, and then he took the opportunity for a promo code again. But that just speaks to what I was saying. This thing has the attention. That email is going to have a higher open rate than some promotional email, and it makes a lot of sense to take a part of that attention. And that's why there's a promo code at the bottom of it, because of the attention there. And then these other grading companies, it also makes sense that they would do that as well. Take this opportunity to say something. But interestingly enough, along those lines, bringing up the FTC thing as well, like you said you don't think it has legs, and maybe it doesn't. But the PR of it, if someone just wants to have a negative headline out there for PSA, will they succeed in doing that, right? If the idea is to just throw a punch and irritate a company or slow something down or get people riled up, that narrative, just like in politics, right? You put a narrative out there, you try to change the sentiment. That's the word I'm looking for, right? Shift in the sentiment. And these headlines and these articles and these emails, they certainly have an effect on the sentiment. Now, over time, we'll see what happens, generally speaking, or what happens organically with the brands involved. But there certainly is something for these companies to talk about, and a negative spin for people to hold on to, because it's in their best interest to do that. And going back to CBCS real quick, there's a friend in the chat here that said, right here was Campbell. Campbell, what's going on? It says, does this drop the value of CBCS slabs? And before we answer that question, I do think this is a really good question. I'm sure all of us have an opinion on this. Now, obviously, in my personal dealings with CBCS, I've seen the same inconsistencies that I might from any grading company. Some books look like they're accurately graded. Some books you might not be so happy with, so on and so forth, right? It's still a human being grading stuff. And we see less errors, just like Ryan said, because the frequency of submissions, or there's just fewer submissions in general, so we're going to see less errors. But percentage-wise, who knows? Maybe they're similar. And in the market, we already know that CBCS underperforms CGC, if that's how you want to put it. So let's think for a minute, because I haven't thought about this yet. There's hundreds of thousands, if I don't know how many, but there's a ton of CBCS product out there already encapsulated. And the books within the encapsulations, just like we've once said about CGC, if CGC goes out of business, the good books are still good books, the values in the books themselves. So what does this mean for existing CBCS slabs on the market? Are they going to go lower in value, or are people going to buy the book, not the grade, and still pay well for them because they're going to cross them over to a company that's still grading? What do you think happens with the existing CBCS stuff?
My thought is, I'll say, I think it'll stay about the same of what it is, like 10 to 20% low, and people will look at them to cross. I think very few people are going to look at them assuming they do stop grading completely. I think that people will just be looking at them for their, what does the grade look like in the slab, and can I cross it to CGC, and what is my cost to cross it, and they'll back that out, to make sure they are at least limiting their risk, and maybe maybe they get a bump. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear what happened with SGC. But at least with SGC, I mean, they are still, like you said, they're still grading a decent number of cards.
Yeah. Well, so really quick, before you jump in, just point out that CBCS is still, at least by the PR of all the stuff, is still going to be up and running. There's no motion, there's no word yet that they're not going to be continuing to grade. And similarly, they could very well be a profitable company that still is having its doors running. This chat came in from David Snyder for the $4.99. I appreciate you, David. He asked this for you, Rob. Neo, can you cross grade SGC to PSA? Is SGC 9.5 worth rolling dice for PSA 10? Do you have a favorite error card? Maybe you can answer this question and then roll it into what you were saying about SGC.
You're not guaranteed the same grade. You have to have them evaluate it just like any other card. And 9.5s, they're split. There's usually a noticeable flaw in a 9.5. That's why I got a 9.5. So what happened with the SGC stuff is initially they took a little bit of a hit, and then they took a bigger hit when it became clear after their president left, and they decided that they were going to stop taking group submissions and basically announce that they were going to turn into a boutique grader. Modern specifically took a slice off, and I don't know the specific percentage, but they definitely took a hit. Vintage, which is what they were known for, did not take a hit, or maybe a very little hit. But Modern definitely did take a little bit of a hit, and it also took a liquidity hit to a degree. Like, it's a little harder to move Modern cards in those slabs as well. Like, if you talk to dealers at shows and things like that, because even if they put out communication that they're going to keep CBCS open and operational, to the, you know, the commenter's standpoint of, I'm not sending them anything right now, a lot of people are going to feel that way. Like, if you just heard that this company got bought by a bigger company, you're not going to feel real great about sending your expensive collectibles into them to potentially get graded with a company that might not exist in a year or two, because the writing's kind of on the wall. Like, even if they keep them around, I don't think anyone has faith that, why would Nat Turner and team go pump a bunch of money in the CBCS to rise them up from the ashes to compete against their brand new division that they just launched, that they're trying to get off the ground. Makes zero sense. So they can say whatever they want. On the card side, I think it's a little different with Beckett hanging around to keep it specific to CBCS. I just don't see why they would even spend a dime on them and just not take the graders and the equipment and the location and just retool everything into a second PSA comic book division, or move them to California, or whatever they want to do. But so SGC slabs did take a hit, even though they are still an active company. Like, their Modern slabs took a little bit of a hit, even though you could still send a card there and get it graded now. And that acquisition, like I said, was almost 2 years ago. 2 years ago, February.
Yeah. So
I add to that too, like the just the idea that, yeah, they can say all the right things right now, and they can say, like, we want Beckett to be its own thing, and maybe Beckett will be, like you said. Beckett has some brand value that is maybe worth exploring for them, but CBCS, like, it just makes no sense for them to continue to run this company, even if that company is already profitable on its own and it has its own collector base. At a certain point, there's just going to be times when it's going to be a conflict of interest for PSA. I mean, if you have CBCS doing artist signings, you're going to bring in Scott Snyder to sign Absolute Batman books. Like, why would they want that to be something that CBCS is doing when they could just have Scott Snyder signing at PSA, you know? So there's going to be these elements that are conflicting, that eventually the bean counters will come in and they'll look at the books and they'll say, why are we still running this company? There's no reason to keep it going. And one little thing I wanted to add is, I wish I was able to kind of pull up some of the stuff in the forums, but when this announcement happened, I went over to CBCS forums and I was just looking at the sentiment, and we talk about, like, the sentiment within the culture. And one thing that was really interesting is that there was definitely a lot of doom and gloom, even amongst the people who you would assume are, like, big CBCS fans and supporters. And this was also true, like, in my comment sections, talking about this in videos. Like, you can see that even though, you know, this company is quote unquote still around right now, people feel like this is going to be a bad look. This is going to be, you know, an eventual end to a company. And relating that back to, what does that mean for the values of slabs? I mean, there was already kind of like this negative sentiment around CBCS slabs selling for less. I have to assume that even if the people who are fans of this company and they actually use this company are also still starting to feel like the gloom, like, this is definitely going to have a little bit of a snowball effect for the values of these slabs over time. And, you know, I know that if I bought a book that was in a CBCS slab because I just wanted that book, you know, maybe it was something I was looking for that I couldn't find in a CGC slab, like, I would now even be more motivated to cross grade it to another company like a PSA or CGC or whoever.
Which is why I really like what Three Rivers Comics said here. He said if PSA is smart, they should offer. Now he said free or discounted. I don't think free ever gets offered, but discounted slabbing for CBCS. I think that should be, well, if they are deciding and vocal about the fact that they're going to be dissolving CBCS, that would be a great promotion. You know, send your CBCS slabs for a discounted crossover. I mean, that's like that. Am I missing something? That seems like a no-brainer move. If they
didn't do that on SGC, if I'm correct, Rob, and though that was a lot of the speculation. No. But again, SGC is still quote unquote an open, active company. But if CBCS actually went, like, they folded it, then happens, you could maybe see that they would want to do that, and maybe that would be something to help increase their population report, which
They-
we'll talk about.
They
a little
should do it
later on.
before CGC does it, because someone's going to say, "Bring us your CBCS slabs for
Yes.
crossover."
Yeah,
they
this-
could,
Shout
but
out
they
to David
definitely would
Snyder.
not. They definitely would not guarantee the grade. Like it would be regraded. So don't think you're automatically getting a
Yeah.
9.8 to a 9.8.
Yeah.
Facts.
There was a lot of confusion or a lot of speculation that people are like, oh, all my SGC 10s are PSA 10 now. And no, that is not the case, because though probably PSA Comics and CBCS probably have very close grading standards given the lineage of their head grader, PSA card and SGC card and like Beckett on the card side have very different grading standards. So a 10 in one holder, there's little slight differences if you actually read the fine print on their grading standards on what qualifies as a card as gem mint or as a as a 9.8 or 9.6 or whatever on the comic book side.
I know.
It's worth
we've been on
noting
this-
that it.
Oh,
Oh, I was just going to respond to that. It is worth noting that, with all the hoopla about PSA stealing trade secrets and grading and all
Yeah.
that stuff with CBCS, which was kind of goofy, it is funny that it's like, maybe there is this credence to CBCS and PSA might grade very similarly in terms of like their standards and metric. I mean, at the very least, they have Mark Wilson, who is now the PSA head grader, who was at CBCS. So it feels like maybe there is some synergy in crossing over grades and stuff like that. But I agree with you guys that, of course, they would have to regrade it. There would be no guarantee of like going from one sub to the next. But yeah, just something to point out.
right.
I'll get to you, Manu, in a second. But shout out to David Snyder once again. As a follow-up, I think this is for Rob here with the $4.99. As a follow-up, if there are a bunch of flare metal inserts, SGC 9.5, worst case, PSA 9 cross grade, are you getting better ROI with the cross grade fee?
That I don't know off the top of my head. You have to just look at comps and then do the math on is it worth the expense of the cross grade, because I wouldn't even say that you're guaranteed a 9. Honestly, who the hell knows? Especially on flare metal inserts, those are very condition sensitive.
Sorry, Manu, what were you saying?
No, nothing. I know we've been on this topic for. I know we've been on this topic for a while now, but we're going over the top line stuff, but getting in the weeds. This is. I really like this idea, and we kind of touched on it, but someone here said, sounds like there might be a great buying opportunity. I lost the comment at the moment, but shout out to who said that. Oh, it was Eggplant Comics. What up? And that actually might really be true. If there's a negative sentiment now about CBCS, or maybe a reluctance to grade with CBCS, not knowing what their future is going to be. So why are you going to put your books in those slabs? Man, if they're planning to keep CBCS, they better roll out some sort of a plan right away so people aren't afraid. And if this does potentially push those prices down, that is a great buying opportunity to buy some really dope books, even less than what you previously would have bought them for. And CBCS is already discounted compared to the rest. I think that's fascinating, actually.
So one comment I saw from MJ Comics, he said, how would you guys feel if CGC were acquiring CBCS? My joke kind of when I saw the announcement from CGC was that they were just upset they didn't they didn't move first,
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we would all feel the same way, but I think it would actually be more impactful if CGC was acquiring Beckett on the comic side, though, because then, I mean, we know already, like from the PSA population report that's out there, like kind of an idea of how many books PSA has graded versus CGC. That would make CGC like 99.8%, or something like that.
They'd be getting FTC letters.
Yeah. I mean, but the real, like my kind of question on that though is, does it somebody had an interesting comment in there where they're like, it's just grading, like who's really going to care? And I realize these are huge businesses, but like for pretty long periods of time, CGC was the only grader. And I don't know, did PSA ever have any competition for a while? I mean, I remember like I was never really big into graded cards, but PSA was always the only one I ever even knew about.
No,
Beckett was actually bigger than them at one point in time.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize, because I always saw PSA labels.
It's been those two, and actually SGC is a very old company. Like SGC has actually been around for a very, very long time.
Really?
But they were hyper focused on pre-war vintage cards.
Okay.
And then during the COVID boom, they jumped more into the modern. They saw like the opportunity and jumped into the modern end of the pool and really grew out their business and their name during the COVID spike.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, they were, I forget when SGC was founded, but they've been around for a good 20, 25 years. They actually, funny enough, back in the day, and someone can correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure I have this right. They were actually part of CGC, and they got spun off onto their own way back in the day.
Well,
You mean the comic side?
No, like they were the card grader, like they were part of the CGC brand.
CCG.
I didn't think CCG ever had card grading before, but I could be
I think
wrong.
it was called SGC, I believe, but it was
Oh,
under
okay.
that company. They just didn't
Okay.
want to own it anymore and sold it off.
Okay.
Interesting.
No, yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I'm almost.
I mean, it
positive.
almost makes sense though when you've got like NGC, you know, for coins, and like
Yeah.
CGC, like it fits in line. So
Did you
it's
guys
possible.
read Eichenbaum's email? Did you guys actually read the email he sent out?
No, I just read
The
the
different-
It was funny because he was like, it was just I got a laugh out of this because he was like, no, it's actually the email's far more
Yeah, that's all
elaborate
I
than the
read was
post.
that thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so different paragraphs in the email say like, we weren't first to coins and now we're the leader. We weren't first to currency and now we're the leader. And it might have even said we weren't first to comics, but I think they were. But in any case, it said something, now we're the leader. And then it says we weren't first to cards either, but I'll let you guys guess how that story's going to end. And I thought that
Oh my
shit was
God.
funny. Like, get the fuck out of here. You're not
What-
going to take over PSA and cards. That's laughable. I don't know. I mean, but in terms of the email, I thought that was super amusing. I like the way he articulated it. I mean, this is war out here with these grading companies. This is a good time.
It's funny how you can just spin phrases to your benefit. Like in his post, he was talking about how we have the fastest growing trading card grading in all of the industry. And it's like, yeah, I guess that is technically true in the way that PSA has the fastest growing comic book grading within the industry, which I kind of want to shift a little bit of gears here, although we're kind of talking still on PSA here. PSA recently introduced their population report, which I think, you know, we can kind of dive into some of the interesting takeaways from it, the number of books that are in there, some, you know, was there this giant explosion of tens that everyone anticipated? But also in talking about this, I think it's important to note that, you know, being that we're doing sort of a recap here of 2025, I mean, this was the year that PSA came into comic book grading. I mean, they opened their doors at San Diego Comic-Con, which is earlier in the summer. I want to throw it out to you guys, just maybe in a more bird's eye view, and you can kind of pick out any sort of topics that you want to talk about within the PSA development pop report, their autograph authentication, et cetera. Just how do you feel their impact has been so far within comic books? If you had to maybe give them a letter grade, what would you actually grade their company?
Man, what would I mean, I think they've had, so I'll say, I think they've had an outsized impact for how many comics they are grading, because CGC has 100% changed things that they are doing as a result of PSA being in the business now. One of them was renaming their census, the population report. Another one was moving autograph grades to the front of the book. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that they'd. Oh, I would say probably updating their population report to show like more detailed numbers on the signed copies. I think that was probably in response to this. You know, so while PSA hasn't graded all that much yet, I think it was like 13, like when we last checked, it was like 13,000 and change, versus, you know, we like CGC's grading like 5,000 a day. But I think they have had, like, CGC is noticing because they seem to be making changes as a result. So I don't, like, I have a problem with some of how they're slabbing some of the more vintage books. So I'm not going to give them an A, but I mean, I'll give them like a B, maybe even a B plus. Like, I think I do like the slabs. I think, and I don't really mind the label. The grading seems fair. Because I kind of take out the 9, 9, 10 garbage. Like that's fringe stuff. You know, 99.9% of us, we just like to talk about it, but we don't really care. And so to me, like, the grading seems fair. The cases are actually nice. I don't know how I feel about them being as heavy as they are, but they have the added UV protection and all of that. So, I mean, I think they're doing fine. And like I said, I think they're having an outsized impact.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I would probably put them in the BB plus range as well. I think, like, as a comic book grader, like a BB plus, I think their impact overall is probably more on the A side, just because of what you described from a reactionary. Like the fact that CGC has already instantly taken them way more seriously than CBCS ever. Like they're like PSA has barely graded anything, and they're already viewing them as like, okay, we need to like step our game up a little bit because they kind of know the behemoth that they could potentially be. I think the other thing that's interesting to note is we're what 6 months into them grading now, basically 5 months. When did they officially start? It was
I don't
midsummer,
remember. It was
right?
like August or
San Diego
It
Comic
was
Con.
San Diego Comic-Con, so that was July, late July.
I mean, generally speaking, you guys could correct me. Maybe I'm missing something. I feel like they've relatively stayed controversy free as a new grader. I mean, there was like that little hiccup with like the Superman thing, and there's been like a couple weird things early on with the labels, but I haven't heard about any of that stuff early on. To me, the biggest issue is, I agree with Ryan, is like the randomness on what they give the bigger slab to compared to the smaller slab on some stuff. Like I got, my Avengers 8 back in that larger size slab, and I'm like, why is this in this?
Yeah.
But I feel like they've generally stayed controversy free, which as a new grader in the marketplace is probably a win. The fact that they haven't had like a major, like there hasn't been a gotcha yet. And I know people have tried like to get like restored books through and things like that. Like we haven't seen any of that like really serious stuff pop up. Like I said, outside the Superman one, and even that, Ryan, maybe you remember the details on that.
I mean, I feel like you could,
but even that was like a little
you could
weird.
see it either. You could see it either way. I mean, it's like it was a centerfold trimming where it's like a chipped up edge, and it's like, I mean, who knows,
right? It's like,
like you could submit that to CGC again, and granted, it would probably be the same graders seeing that book. Like I wouldn't be surprised if like Matt Nelson was looking at that book, so they might remember, like that situation, and they would grade it the same. But it feels like a situation that if it was, say, a lower dollar book, like $1,000 book that had that type of issue, and you could send it in 3 times, and maybe 2 of the times it gets trimmed, 1 time it doesn't. Like those interior page trimmings can be just a total crapshoot.
Yeah. So even like something like that was kind of fringe case at best. So they've relatively stayed, scot-free when it comes to like drama around the comic book side. Cards is a different story.
Cards is a different story.
Yeah, cards is a different story. On the comic book side, though, they've stayed relatively clean on that, which I think is impressive given that they've just launched, and I'm sure people are throwing every wrench at them to try to slip something past them. So I think, outside, I don't know what their expectations were for numbers out of the gate, but I don't know. I think they're doing pretty okay. I know that they've gotten a decent. I think what did you say the Comic Pop report was? 13,000.
It was like 13 and change, I think. Because
I think they have another.
I just remember that they had that one book that graded like 3,000 plus copies, and and that was like 25% of
the shoe collab.
Yeah,
and then I think they have like another 3,000 to 4,000 magazines on their pop report, and I still think that's where they're gonna. I think the magazine business in the long run will hurt CGC. Like in regards to stealing business away, I think the magazine side has a bigger impact potentially, like on CGC directly, than the comic books do. But they've done exactly what we wanted them to do when this was initially launched. Was even if you never want to use them, they need to exist to keep CGC honest. And it seems like in the first 6 months, they've at least accomplished that goal. So even if you don't give a crap about submitting a book to PSA, I think you've still won because we've seen CGC make some small improvements.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like I'm submitting to CGC, but I want them to have competition because we talked about this a number of times. Like it feels like CGC hasn't updated their slab, giving you anything new in forever. I mean, like not adding like anything like UV protection or any type of anti-theft features or that kind of stuff. And so that's the type of thing that a competitor that has those features can potentially bring into the market. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see it. For the Reef, no, PSA did not take 25% of the market. They have taken less than a percentage point. I mean, like we said, like they've graded 13,000 books in 5 months, and that's the amount that CGC grades in 2 days. So
I think CGC's numbers are down to closer to 3,000 to 4,000 now. I'll have to check with Gem Rate, but I think this year they have slowed down in general.
But yeah.
What do you think about PSA so far coming into comic books?
Just we'll clear out for about 20 minutes.
Um, I love what the guys have said. PSA's.
You want to put your hat on?
Which one? I got a couple. No, but no, I don't have much to add to that. I like what their entry's been like. I like the progress that they've made. In the world of comic book grading, I think everyone's pretty much aware that they're here. I'm sure there are people that, still might not be, but the same way that I think there's probably people that like know CGC but don't know CBCS, right? But the thing is, those people will continue to never know CBCS, but they will eventually hear about PSA, I assume. So I think the awareness is one of the main objectives for a new entrant. And they've certainly accomplished that. I think they've done a great job. I'm happy with it. I agree with most of what the guys have said here. And I look forward to seeing their progress continue.
What would you say is sort of the sentiment if you were to kind of just give your temp check on what the community feels about PSA? I mean, we talk about that one video that you shared with Bricks Comics slamming the case on the desk, and that was kind of like a viral clip, and everybody was talking about that. Like, do you feel like sentiment for PSA Comics is higher than that of CGC, or do you think that they've done a good job in kind of ingratiating themselves with the people?
Wait, what would that second part? I think I know. I don't know that word, but I think I agree with that second part. What I mean is, I don't know that their sentiment has taken over CGC. Listen, there's the vocal commenter in the comment section that will, take every shot at PSA possible because they're so attached to CGC, their inventory is CGC, their collection is CGC, they love CGC, they think CGC is their friend, all of this stuff for whatever reason, right? And those tend to be kind of highlighted in our minds, the spicy comments. But I speak to dozens of collectors a day, and most of the collectors that aren't really loyal to any, grading company, they're loyal to their books, they're loyal to wanting to get a book graded, they're an actual collector. They're pretty much open to it. What I get more often than somebody telling me which way they want to go is, what should I do? Right? And I don't answer that question for anyone. I tell them, well, it is a matter of personal preference. And there are certain things that are unavoidable in the market right now. Like it was said in chat, and it's been said amongst us before too, that some of the vintage stuff, the golden age stuff, people still feel more confident putting that into a CGC slab because they know that buyer market is just far more mature, right? The brand confidence exists there. And there is something interesting about encapsulating a book that's a lower grade book, because even if it bangs around in the slab and gets damaged, it's still a 3.0, and the problems come out of these 9.8s and 9.9s that through shipping. I just had a package come with 5 Mark Jewelers CGC slabs in it, and the box got hit one time properly, and it took a hole in the box. It was a UPS shipment. Point is, only one slab cracked, but 4 of the 5 books took the same exact damage because that lower corner, the energy did what it did, and the book flew into the same corner of 4 of the 5 slabs, and it basically folded over. And so in those high grade books, that makes a huge difference, and that's a big problem. And I'm sure some things do happen from time to time in shipping, even with PSA slabs, but I haven't noticed them yet. And that could be because of the, how fewer PSA books are out there at the moment. But that issue, or the insecure nature, or not the vulnerabilities of the CGC slab are a really big problem. So when people come to me and they ask, what they should do or who they should grade with, that tells me 2 things. One, they're open to PSA, which is a victory for PSA, right? And if someone is to push them in that direction, they're likely to go in that direction. I'm just careful not to push. Now, I will provide my opinion on a public platform, but in a private conversation, I'm not trying to steer anyone. I want someone to do what feels best for them. But I will outline certain things, like when you're shipping CGC books around, they're not safe. And it's also a matter of fact that CGC is not only still bending books, but I think they've just normalized it. This somewhat degree of a bend with these modern, like any books that I've graded or received recently that are from the 80s and 90s, they pretty much all have a little bend in them. And I don't know why that's become acceptable. Books should be flat, like just period, full stop, you know? And these things, not only do you see the bend from the spine, you also see the bend from the bottom. And if the book doesn't have a tick, I know I'm a broken record with this, but if the book doesn't have a tick, it's fine. But if the book has any imperfection in the spine, that thing really pronounces the valleys or the whatever that tick is called, you know, it folds it, it makes it catch more light, and it looks really ugly, and it sends a wave through the spine. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. PSA books are flat, right? So these points I will make, and then an individual will decide whatever they decide. The point is, the sentiment is, most collectors are open to the idea, but most collectors have not converted or actually participated in submitting to PSA yet. But the openness is the point, especially 6 months in. I think eventually people are going to start to dabble in both, and then they're going to pick. But CGC still has improvements to make, which will certainly keep a lot of people at CGC if they make certain improvements that they need to make. Sorry, I might have digressed a bit or went on a tangent or two, but that's kind of my long-winded answer on the sentiment. I think PSA is in a good place to win over some more customers because customers are not apprehensive or reluctant. They just haven't made up their mind yet.
To kind of round out this topic on PSA, kind of doing a retrospective on them in 2025, it's funny because in prepping for this show, I did go back to our stream that we did at the end of last year. And I just kind of quickly looked at like what were the topics and what were some of the talking points going into 2025 that I thought would be interesting. And one of the things I remember saying is that for CGC in 2025, I think I said that I felt a successful year for them would be to just not have any bad PR. Like, they just needed to grade, be quiet, and not do anything, versus PSA had to sort of come in and really explode and have a lot of great headlines and do all these cool things. So it was like very opposite strategies for each company. And as we kind of tie it up, I'm curious to just throw it out to you guys. Who do you think had a better year, PSA or CGC? And maybe you can even lump in PSA with the recent card sentiment that is around them as well.
Better year.
If you're throwing cards in, it's probably CGC. If you're sticking the comics, it would be, I think it's a more even conversation. Because what was CGC's big issue this year? Just Bananagate on the comic side?
No, but that was last year, wasn't it?
That was last year.
So
Yeah.
that's
that was
like,
actually last year, carried into this
CGC
year.
really
CGC
hasn't had an issue. They've had something that carried through because they haven't really resolved
the issues.
But people are talking about it a lot less now than they were, because it's just like anything. It just kind of like you start talking about other things. So I mean, to me, the reality is like CGC really hasn't had anything like really that I went back through and like we were talking about like ranking our videos in terms of like the views, and it kind of gives you an idea what people care about. And the funny thing was, like, I make like 99% comic channel. My second highest viewed video was about CGC screwing up those Pokemon test cards.
Yeah,
you know, and so it's like it was their card side had a scandal, but their comic side really didn't.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, both companies had good years and bad years. PSA Comics definitely had a good year. I think anytime you launch a company and overall, or a division of your company, and as we all kind of gave them Bs, B pluses, like that's really solid. Like, because I agree with you. They didn't have a major scandal that was like, oh, I sent in 5 CGC restored books and they all came back, you know, in red labels for PSA. So they didn't have anything crazy like that. And yeah, CGC just, they had their heads down and they graded books, and the outside of
like
residual.
They've made some changes that I feel like have helped things. Like I've noticed they've largely changed how they ship. And I've just noticed the books that I've gotten since I've sent in a fair amount of stuff recently. I haven't had any cracks yet. I mean, hopefully I'm not jinxing myself there, but I haven't any cracks yet. And I've just noticed I used to always have scuffs or scratches or things, and I have not seen that. And so I don't know if they're doing a little better job on checking the plastic before they're using it or what, but I have noticed things like that have seemed like they've been like small improvements. I agree. I agree with Manu though. I wish that the Bananagate thing was not even in the conversation anymore, because it shouldn't be. Like you're absolutely right. Like it's fine as long as the spine is perfect, but once the spine's not perfect, it becomes a focal point for that deflection, and yeah you can see an issue.
So maybe CGC did exactly what Swag said. They did the bare
Oh,
minimum and they avoided bad press for the most
the
part. And
bloating,
so,
Derek.
oh yeah,
Derek
the
is
bloating,
that's
The
right.
bloating.
There was
Admittedly,
Bloatgate.
bloatgate.
though, bloatgate did not have the same effect that all the other gates
Yeah, it
had,
didn't have the
and
legs. Yeah.
I think it offsets with the fact that yes, I do want to give CGC some flowers because they came out with their autograph pop report, which I thought was a really cool feature, and so they had generally good successes. So I think it was actually honestly a good year for both companies, to be honest. But shout out once again to David Schneider with another 499. This is to Neo as well. Neo, do you use special light magnifying glass for cards you consider to send for grading? Any tips, tricks?
No, I do have an electronic microscope, but I use it maybe a couple times a year. It's handy when you really, really need it, but I don't use it most of the time when I'm submitting to grading. And this is actually the least amount of submissions I've sent in for grading in an entire year. Like we were talking about grading PSA. On the comic side, I would give them like the BB plus. On the card side, I'd probably give them like a D minus. Like it's kind of funny how the two different the same company but two different divisions have had drastically different years in regards to PR and just nonsense and shenanigans.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of put a bow on that topic and kind of transition to our next one here, which is to be a little bit of current news mixed in with a year-end look back. And it's funny because for everybody watching and those in chat, we all kind of look back through our catalog of content that we made this year and just kind of were like, oh, what were some of the most viewed videos and what were some interesting topics that were covered? And to your point, Ryan, you had a video that had Pokemon that was a big video with a lot of views on it. One of my videos that had a ton of views on it was when I randomly covered the fact that we had a Pokemon shaped Cheeto sell for $87,000
That was
this
I
year.
didn't remember that was this year.
I can't
that was
believe this shit is back in the topic again. Like, because now it's on the
well,
show and we're looking at the stupid fucking
listen,
Cheeto again.
it was don't sleep on graded Cheetos, but I
No,
wanted to bring this
man.
up as a transition into the conversation about Pokemon, which kind of leads us to, careful now, Ken Golden time, where I
Exactly.
don't know
Yeah.
if you guys saw my video the other day where I talked about how there were so many PR, like news publications talking about collectibles booming, Ken Golden, Golden Auction, King of Collectibles, and most notably, Logan Paul is now selling his Illustrator card, which is the most expensive Pokemon card ever sold. And that's going to be auctioned off next year in February. And we kind of also had this other headline, which I don't know if you guys caught this one, but Millennium Print Group, who is the group that is owned by the Pokemon Company, is in the process to open a massive new production facility in North Carolina. It's reportedly the largest U.S. manufacturing lease of 2025, and it's going to be able to grant them the ability to meet printing demands. And I guess I kind of wanted to square it back to this news story here, and the Cheetos, and just basically have this segment be kind of 2025. This was the year of Pokemon.
Oh
And
yeah.
everything went absolutely insane in it. Another one of my most viewed videos was when I was just covering like Pokemon fights at Costco. That
Yeah.
was like something that got tons of views. And I guess I kind of wanted to just sort of throw it out to you guys and maybe we can kind of just dissect this and talk a little bit about it. But what do you make of the Pokemon craze? How do you feel the sentiment is within that trading card space? And the rise of now One Piece. I mean, I kind of feel like here at the end of the year, everybody is sort of now down on Pokemon, or there's a lot of like sort of pushback to Pokemon values. And similarly, what do you make of Logan Paul selling his most expensive Pokemon card right now, being that apparently with all the conversation in the media and the headlines, this is the golden age of collectibles and we're on the up and up. So I don't know if you guys have any general thoughts
Mr.
on that.
Beast changing his icon to Luffy. Like that's another, like if he starts pushing
Ryan just came out with
yeah.
a Mr. Beast icon.
But I mean that
reference.
he's bigger than
That's a
Logan
big deal.
Paul. He's bigger than Logan Paul.
No,
So,
he's big. Listen, I'm only gonna have a tiny bit on this, so I'm just gonna get this out, and then you guys run with it because I know this is your you guys are into this. And Swag, I just want to say when I said this damn Cheeto is back on the show, I didn't mean this show. I meant I tried to watch the first episode of King of Collectibles, but the whole thing was Logan Paul and a Cheeto, and I couldn't even finish it because it's the maximum hype. It's the top of doesn't matter to most collectors, right? Like it's just completely a cartoon, you know, and it wasn't in the weeds of collecting enough to keep my attention. I'm still going to watch the entire episodes or whatever's in the season. Like I love this kind of program, and I support what they're doing. Like I love the hustle, I love it all, so I'm going to watch it. But I can't chew on that Cheeto. I don't give a shit about Logan's Pokemon. I know it's super expensive. I know it's rare. I know it's the highest grade, but it's like I want a more sophisticated collecting conversation, right? When Logan sits there and says, when an interviewer that doesn't know squat about that card says to Logan, well, what's so significant about this? It's really rare. I actually really enjoyed him sharing the story. Like, I didn't know this. Like that trainer, that Pikachu trainer, correct me if I'm saying anything incorrectly. Again, I don't know anything about it, that there were only 39 of them and they were given out to people that were part of like a tournament. Like that's really cool. So it's scarce in its own. And he has the only PSA 10, but it's still weird. Listen, it's not a bad thing. It's just like super headline conversation. Like I don't know exactly what it means to any collectors or what it does for the collecting community. And I do have that same concern that you presented in your latest or one of your most recent videos, Swag, that is this the sign of like the end, like when everyone's talking about, oh, you got to get into a PSA 10 Pokemon, it's better than whatever. Like that usually signifies a top, right? And I don't know if history always repeats itself, but is this too frothy? Is this too much enthusiasm? Like, are there too many celebrities talking about Pokemon? That's kind of how I feel. But being not in Pokemon, not in that space, not engaging, I actually don't know. So it's just like a bird's eye view of it. It's like it's all kind of cringy, and I couldn't finish that episode because it was Cheetos and Logan Paul, but I will finish that episode, and that's all. That's my little negative rant on it or whatever. Shout out Ken, shout out the show. I look forward to watching the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say Pokemon has felt extremely, anything that does this, like you see that. I mean, there's a number of markets that have been like that this year. Like Gold and Silver have done that. Pokemon has done that. One Piece has done that. Like anytime you see that, like, yeah, it may keep going for another year, but someone's going to get burnt pretty bad. They're going to buy at the wrong time and it's going to just wreck them. And so all I can really say, because it happened with comics, comics did that. It's like all you can really say with that is you just got to be careful. Like if it's stuff you want to buy, you just got to be careful. Like I had mentioned in one of our chats, I was watching a channel, Chasing Cardboard, where a guy bought, like there was another guy who was a big sports card collector, and he was selling all of his sports cards to buy One Piece. And now to go along with that, though, he had started buying One Piece about a year prior, basically early this year. And so he was in at a point where even if it corrects 50%, he's still okay. Like he was buying cards for $650 that are now going for 10 or 12,000. And so he's like, if it corrects to 6,000 or 4,000, I'm still fine. I don't care. But if you're buying One Piece cards right now for 10 or 12,000, you may be be ready to take a loss. You may do fine. Who knows? But you may also just get destroyed within a year or two. And so that kind of just my point there. Anytime I see that, I try to stay away from that. It's frightening.
I agree with you. That's usually wise, right? But if you have it to sell into that. Don't buy into that.
Well, that's what people have a hard time with. Like they're afraid to sell because they want to catch the top.
No.
And I was watching.
Yeah.
Like I was watching Alpha Investments recently, and he was talking about that. He's like, he's just talking about catching the top or the bottom. He's like, you don't have to. You just have to get your margin. You
just have to make
so many people have a hard time getting that.
Nobody ever went broke taking a profit. Yeah,
exactly,
absolutely.
right? And that's just the human psychology. People always do the opposite of what they should, right? Because they're reacting to the masses. They're reacting to the sentiment. But the mass sentiment in a market, you could usually do the opposite. If everyone's like super enthusiastic, well, that means it's liquid. Get your money. And if everyone's super scared, they're going to sell, price is going to go down. You should probably do some buying because you're getting a discount, right? Because everyone's getting shaken loose. In any case, one of the interesting things that I just remembered about the show, which is more fascinating for me to pay attention to, not that we don't all know that a Cheeto's a fucking Cheeto, but what was so interesting about it is that, when they were doing their skit around the Cheeto, the staff was basically, and I forget the young lady's name. She's super cool. I forget her name that works on the team there. And she was like, wait, Ken's approving this? Ken's going to let you sell this stupid Cheeto? And that's how they're talking about it for the sake of entertainment. And then the story became, the guy responds, the guy that was showing the lady the Cheeto says, dude, if I can get the right reel made out of this, if I could market it the right way, it's stupid enough to go viral and that will lead to money. That sums it all up. You guys are buying bullshit for the headline. You want to be the headline, so you're willing to spend 80K. But if you're rich enough to spend 80K so you could have the gag gift, well, then that's fucking fine. But to think that that's indicative of values in the market, or that we should all be looking in Cheeto bags to hit the lottery, that's fucking stupid. And they actually know that, and they speak about it in that way on the show as well. So that
I am not going to sit here
You
and
know-
badmouth Cheetos. All right.
Yeah. How
they're
dare
not even
you,
red
you know,
anymore. That red color got banned, I think. That bullshit chemical.
How dare you say that? Yeah, you know, and it's funny because Derek beat me in the chat where he was talking about the banana taped to the wall. But it's like, you know, sometimes the meme is the thing that you're buying, which is, of course, the case with the Cheeto. And that's kind of just the collectible world, which I think is interesting. And, you know, I said it in my video where it's like, I just feel like social media is the perfect vehicle for collectibles, which maybe this is cope, but like at the same time, maybe this is why we're not at the end. Like maybe we truly are at the beginning because like this is just so crazy, like with all the hype and, you know, whether you're posting your wins or your L's, like people love this stuff and they just eat it up. But Rob, let me throw it to you because you got the TCG second channel where, you know, you talk about Pokemon cards and things like that. But what do you make about the year of Pokemon and what's kind of been like the culture around it? How do sports card people feel about Pokemon, or do you just have general thoughts on what we've discussed?
I mean, I love Pokemon. It's probably going to buy me an AF-15 next year. So
You just got a Charizard this year, didn't you?
yeah, at the very beginning of the year, I bought that. It was one of my first purchases of 2025. It's actually sitting on my desk. It was on my desk from the thing, just a PSA 6.
Ooh, I actually want to talk about that, Guilt Nomad.
So sports card people are annoyed at Pokemon because it's turned sports card shows in the 50% TCG, 50% sports card shows. So before you would go to like a 100 table show and it would be like 95 sports card tables and 5 like TCG tables. And now in some cases it's like 60-40 to the TCG side of things. And we're also starting to see a rise of TCG only shows now, at least in my area. You know, there's a couple promoters that do, you know, 100 to 200 table only TCG shows, and they are packed, way busier than some of the sports card shows even. So the sports card people are generally annoyed. It's also backed up PSA, to go back to the previous conversation. PSA is slammed with TCG, which the sports card people are annoyed about because it's raised their prices, slowed their turnaround times down because of all the Pokemon going into grading and kind of clogging up that process. But it does feel like, you know, late in 2025, that market has slowed, but it was due to slow anyways. And it feels like it's already leveled back off again. You know, I was looking at my own sealed stuff because I have quite a bit of sealed Pokemon still, and over the last 30 days it's dead flat. Like my collection on the collection tracking tool that I use, it's perfectly flat. It hasn't gone up, hasn't gone down. It's basically normalized after coming down maybe like 10 to 20%, but year over year it's up, you know, 500%. So to use your One Piece example from before, most of the stuff, speaking personally, that I bought into, I bought so cheap that even if it dropped 50% in value, I'm still in the green on it. I mean, I'd be pissed, I'd be annoyed, but I still would be taking a loss on it when I went to go sell it.
You're
but
waiting to sell?
If you bought in like, I think the market peaked in like late August, into September, maybe into October, I think was the highs of the market. And then it cooled off like October, November. And then it feels like December is kind of flattened out again on a lot of stuff.
Why'd you say it's going to buy you an AF-15 next year? You haven't sold yet? You're not selling
I started
yet?
selling some stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically taking the profits from my Pokemon Steel investment.
I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing. Like, I'm shilling for alpha investments now, but like, that was one of the things that like, he did his like year-end recap, and he was talking about how like amazing 2025 was for cards. But you've got all these people that are like, oh, it's terrible, you know, or I'm barely surviving this. And it's like, yeah, it corrected like 10, like you just said, like 10 or 20%, but it's up 200%, you know, or more than that, 500%. It's like, you got to zoom out a little bit to look at how well this stuff is really doing. And it's pretty incredible.
It is.
Can I make
Go
a
ahead,
point of
Clyde.
that? I mean, I think that what's interesting about that is like I feel like a lot of times the people who are complaining are the ones that bought into that hype.
Oh yeah,
So
it's the bros.
ultimately it becomes like, well, what is your entry point into this? And you know, it goes back to like even the things that, you know, I know a lot of us talk about on our channels and stuff, which is like the only thing that matters is like what you buy something for. Like whether a certain collectible vertical is hot or not.
Right.
You know, if you find something for pennies on the dollar, like it's going to be a great investment, you know? And so that's really all it comes down to, and like really the best way to control. But I do think that's funny because like, yeah, everybody has drastically different years based on what you ended up chasing, what you ended up buying, and what you ended up finding.
Your entry, like that's the most, like what you said, your entry means everything, right? Like, and that's so true. Like I get calls about Bitcoin. When is Bitcoin going to go back up? I'm like, guys, it's 85,000. You know, when's it going to go back to 120?
Like 2 years ago, I think it was only 30, right? So I mean, yeah, it's like
yeah, like you know, it was $9,000 when the pandemic hit. You know what I mean? Like, it's doing just fine. In fact, well, I know this isn't what we're talking about, but what I generally tell people is, I hope it goes to 60. That seems like a great buying opportunity, you know, and then just shut up and hold it, you know, and that's that. But I don't know if Pokemon works the same way.
I think
as
part of the
shut up and
people
hold
that are pissed is the people that started buying this year and they realized that like they came into the super hot market and they thought that it was super easy money because you would literally just buy stuff and like a week later you'd be up like 20%. And that's not really how, at least on the sealed side, that works. Like normally you buy the stuff and you have to sit on it for like 3 to 5 years to see a pretty decent return. And that wasn't the case the last year. So I think a lot of people were buying in and like, they're like, oh, why hasn't this doubled? Or, oh my God, it went down slightly, when that's actually the way that sealed investing / hoarding / gambling, whatever you want to call it, typically works. Like you buy it, like a lot of the stuff that I bought 3-4 years ago sat next to flat or was up like 1%, or I was down slightly on for like an entire year before it started slowly creeping up, and then everything got juiced in the last year. So I think people came in and were like, oh wait, this is great, this is how it works, and now they're starting to figure out like how sealed hoarding actually works. Like it's a long game, and people got a cheat code this year.
It's definitely a long game, and that was the cheat code that people had in comic books in 2021. Like you could literally buy stuff and it was going up like crazy, just the next day. But
yeah,
it's
that's this whole thing. Like you got to be scared of it a little bit.
hockey stick. Well, give it a shout out to Guilt Nomad for the $5 who says, I think
Yes.
the most underrated play was the Kabuto King story about buying all the Kabuto cards up. Manu, I saw you
Yeah, because
kind of interested in this one.
A lot of friends shared this with me, and they were enthusiastic, and you know, and I kept seeing the pictures with more and more cards develop because people started donating this card to this gentleman. Again, novice when it comes to this stuff. I believe it's like a first edition from an original release of Pokemon. But my question is, and this is for Neo and Ryan, aren't there millions of them? How could someone get them all?
I mean, he can't get them all, but like you can buy all the ones that are available on TCG Player. That's how people like do handle that type of stuff, like where they get a temporary spike to the price, is they'll buy all the copies on TCG Player and then they'll like trickle them out. But you're still probably not going to end up super great, because once like you get a few, because I think I saw it jump from like it was like a $3 card or whatever to a $60 card. But then how many people are going to pay 60 before it gets back down to 3, and you're just kind of stuck with a million of these things. So yeah, you aren't buying them all, but you are buying all the available copies.
You're just trying to buy up what's in the market, and then that's way less. That's what's actually out there, because a lot of the those were probably thrown away or sitting in a binder. Most people aren't even aware what the hell's going on the internet to begin with. and then you just keep buying as more come to market and just basically try to control the available supply and then start trickling them out. It actually
It's
happens.
like Mickey said though. It's a meme. Like people were buying it to for the meme, you know, to like just show they had that card.
And then once it goes public like that, like Ryan's saying, a lot of people will jump on the bandwagon. They're like, well, I want to hoard it too. And then they start buying it up. So it pulls even more supply off the market. It used to happen, and I don't know that it's happened lately. But you know, once again, we're the Alpha Investment fanboy club, me and Ryan.
Hey, no, we like Alpha Investment. Oh, I like Reserved. Alpha's the oh, my bad. Sorry. Yeah, my bad. Yeah.
Rudy, you
I
know,
like
in the
Alphas
past,
too.
there was
too, yeah.
lots of buyouts of reserve list MTG. It was pretty common, you know, prior in the early COVID days, and even pre-COVID, that was something that people did a lot. They would have buyouts on reserve list cards to spike the price. So it's not, this is a pretty common tactic in the TCG market.
It's also important to note that just in collectibles in general, I mean, it always happens, right? When a book gets hot, all of a sudden, some of these books just find their way out into the world, right? Like this is just how collectibles work. Like if you have a card that gets FOMO and everyone's buying it, like just know, like there's always going to be people that have it in their collections or in their binders. And the reason it looked rare on the available online marketplaces is because there was no point to listing it for sale. But then when there is a point to list it for sale, then all of a sudden they all start popping up. So this is just
and that's why you should grade every book you have so that you are always ready.
Yes, be always ready. Shout out to the random guys who like make it their whole thing to be like, I'm gonna sit on this random West Coast Avengers book that you know, I have the entire market of 9/8, so that when that one thing happens in the news, I can be the one copy that's available for $1,000.
They made a killing
like
on that White Vision though. So
they did. Well, speaking of making killings and values and prices and things like that, kind of looking back in 2025, a couple other things I thought was interesting was just the marketplace in general. And I want to kind of, again, try to tie this to current stuff that's going on. Maybe we could circle it back with comic books and other marketplaces. But 2025 was the year that we had, of course, the Frank Frazetta original art sale for $13.5 million on this painting. We also had this other one right here that was $1.75 million that sold in November. All of these original art pieces for Frank Frazetta were coming to market, getting lots of prices, save for the one that had the reserve auction that we talked about on a previous show. Similarly, we had the Superman #1 that we also covered multiple times on the show, the CGC 9.0 top of census, setting the record for a comic book the comic book price that was ever paid at $9.12 million. And also, Ryan, you know, you kind of did a recent video talking about this Bronze Age collection, which is the video right here, that recently came to market that's kind of been topping the census and flooding things, where we sort of have top of the Bronze Age kind of pulling back, but we also have, you know, these high-end books that are setting records like the Superman ones, and not just the Superman one, but a lot of, say, that market of buyer has really shown up this year, whereas was not the case, I think, in the previous year or two. But also, as I do my comic book index, and I will have one more comic book index before the year is out, we still have a little bit of hemorrhaging of values. But I kind of want to just open the floor to just the value conversation, a look back at 2025 as far as like how we feel the market performed, how we feel values have held up or continue to go down, and maybe a little bit of a look into the future of where they may be going from here. But what did you guys think about the comic book value market this year?
I was just saying, comic books only go up, right? So everybody should just buy comics.
Only ever go
all
up,
the time,
100%.
But
just like Pokemon.
Mark Jewelers have done very well. Mark Jewelers have done very well.
I mean, my general thought has been, from what I've seen this year, is there's been a dichotomy in the market, is how I've phrased it. And that's the high end has been doing exceptionally well, and the lower to mid end has been kind of languishing to down. I think my general thought is just like, it's just the available, like as things have gotten more expensive and all this kind of stuff and inflation and everything, like one market is hit a lot harder by that than another. And I just generally think that that's kind of what we're seeing right now. How long that's going to continue, I can't say. I have no idea. But but that is what I've generally been seeing. Like the high end typically is doing pretty good. There are deals out there. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's definitely deals out there. We've seen maybe a shift into high end artwork a little more than comics in some ways. But I mean, that's generally the trend that I've seen. The idea with, or the video about the high end bronze stuff, though, that was more, that's not so much a market issue in terms of like demand for the books as it is an availability of the books in high grade. And it's that there has been a outsized increase in 9/8 in quite a few Marvel Bronze Age books over the last year. And if those books are going to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Let's just maybe fully set up the story, give the full context here. So there was a recent collection find in Seattle that saw tons and tons of copies of Bronze Age books that were all high grade. A lot of those having the mega keys that were hitting 9/8, the Tomb of Dracula 10's First Blade, the first appearance of Luke Cage, all of those getting sent to CGC, getting sold.
Apparently, at least one of the Marvel Spotlight 5s that came in 9/8 was in that collection.
Yeah, so this really has caused a lot of disruption in the high end in the market. But kind of carry on with what you were saying here. I just want to kind of fold in that context.
Yeah. So kind of the disruption that it's had is that with books like that, there's only so much demand for them. And a lot of times the value that they hold is because they are relatively rare in grade. And if you start having like Tomb of Dracula 10, I think if you look at just GPA, it's like each year it's like 2 sell or 1 sell or 3 sell. This year alone, and just in reported sales, because it doesn't include Comic Link, there have been 9. And so like you have this like big multiple increase where you're seeing them in every major auction. And so then the price just goes down and down and down. And then as that 9/8 price gets close to the 9/6 price, people go, well, I'm not going to pay that for a 9/6. So the 9/6 goes down. Then the 9/4 goes down. And it like has this ripple effect. Now there's some books I felt are going to be impacted less than others. Like the Marvel Spotlight 5, there are only, I think, 6 graded copies in a 9/8, but they still added 2 this year. There were only 4. And so I think that would really hurt the Marvel Spotlight 5 9/8 price potentially if those are coming out, but it's not really going to hurt the 9/6 because the 9/6 is going for like, I think 25,000 or something. The 9/8 is going for 350,000. So it has to drop down a huge amount before it starts to hurt the lower grades. But in books like Tomb of Dracula 10, books like the Hero for Hire, like when those start to get down and get closer, or like Amazing Spider-Man 129, like the 9/8 and the 9/6 aren't there. It's about double, roughly. And so you can get closer very easily and you can start impacting those prices. And so it's more just for people to be aware that in that era, like especially Bronze Age and newer, people were stacking books, like multiples of the same copies. Whereas collectors generally prior to that, what you see is they were collecting runs. So it was like that you'll find collections that have Amazing Spider-Man 1 through, 250 or whatever in some collection. But then for Hero for Hire, it's like, oh, I have 10 copies of this. And so it's just a very different type of collector. And when those collections are found, you can have some big impacts. It does occasionally happen in the Silver Age, like with Fantastic 448, first Silver Surfer, there was a warehouse find of that book. And so that's not really a collection, but you found like an undistributed box of these or boxes. And that's why the census for Fantastic 448 is so different than the census for 49. There are tons of 9/8s and 9/6s, whereas with 49, there are very few. And so there's just little things that people just need to be aware of the risks that are out there in certain parts of the market.
Absolutely. Big shout out to the Real McCoy Collector for the $4.99 that says, shout out to Manu and the Ungraded Truth for starting this show and being a voice for the people and sharing such great info for everyone to be aware of. Well, it's our pleasure. It's been great.
Thank you, my man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Real McCoy, happy holidays, my man.
Yeah, and Knucking Futz has a really good point, like that Spawn Netherlands book.
Right.
Like that is a perfect example.
Okay,
like, that book
right.
was
Question
super
for you.
expensive, and then wait.
Can I jump in really quick? Everything you're saying is true, Ryan. But I also think it's important to just kind of bring it back to the fact that this Superman 1 in the 9.0 was found this year.
That's
and
true.
On top of that, we also had this auction that is going to be coming up, where we had a Detective Comics #1 that was, I don't know if it was recently found, but it was
It wasn't
recently
found.
graded.
This was from a former or Overstreet advisor that passed away this year, and this is a book from his collection. So it's like it wasn't found, but it was just graded.
Right, it was just great. So, but still very interesting. And
Doesn't
listen,
exist until it's slabbed.
it doesn't exist till it's slab. Although I'll just say,
Oh,
I did it all the time when there, I got the guys. Shout out to all you guys who come up to me at like the comic shows and the cons. I talk to like the old school guys, and every show I go to, there's always an old school guy that goes like, "Dude, Swag, you don't know, man. I know a guy that has the best AF-15 copy, and I don't know if they're blowing smoke or whatever. But
show me.
the point is, I hear it enough where it's like there are guys that don't have graded books."
Yeah.
That have crazy collections. And that's always a risk that these things can be added into the census. Obviously, less likely for Golden Age comic books. I mean, because a lot of this stuff, if it had existed, it more likely would have already manifested in some way. But still, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there.
With Golden Age stuff like this, though, like I don't think that really hurt the prices in anything, because it set a new record. Because like sometimes you wonder, like, is that going to hurt the prior highest graded copy? Maybe, but I mean that sale was so strong that maybe not. That may have actually helped the under copy.
So
what were you saying, Manu?
Oh, thank you. Ryan did a great job of like summing up his video. But Ryan, like that video was awesome. The information in there and like the insight. No, everyone should check it out. It was like a super smart video. And I love that. I love how, like you said about the Marvel Spotlight 5, right? Like creating that relationship between that value gap from a several $100,000 9.8 to a $25,000 9.6, and having the foresight to say, well, even if that $350,000 book becomes a $250,000 book, this really isn't going to have the same percentage effect on the 9.6. It's just not going to happen until the relationship becomes an actual option for someone. Like, oh, I don't want the 9.8. I'll just, So anyway, everyone check out that video. And the Netherlands Spawn got brought up, and really quickly, I do want to touch on that because that to me is a very fun book. And someone in the chat, Harry Potter Obama, shout out, he says Spawn Netherlands. So real quick, there was like I'm going to get it wrong. There was like a video game tournament, and then I think the pandemic happened. The tournament got canceled. So only a few of these books got distributed, and they were said to have only created X amount, like a small number, like 50 or 100. And then many years later, a short box of them got delivered to a comic book store in Southern California. And the people that had the boxes of books tried to keep it under wraps, try to trickle them out. One dealer decided to like go on Whatnot and just blow them out. And so the other dealers that had the boxes of books also had to start selling them. The book went from a $5,000 9.8 to a $500 9.8. And that brings us to where we are right now. And I want to ask you, Ryan, at $200 or $250 for that 9.8, do you think it's cool? Because I think it's fucking cool. Like I damn near want to buy one of those at like a couple $100.
I mean, I haven't been tracking the price, but that feels like, I mean, it's still a relatively low census book
for a Spawn book, absolutely.
Spawn.
Yeah.
So that seems like that's not a bad pickup once you get down to like not all that much over, like, I mean, just like $100 to $200 9.8 is like kind of like nothing, So,
yeah, and I don't know if it's quite. I think I did recently see a $200 and something sale, and if another one comes up at auction, I'll probably bid at it for that amount. Or if someone offers one to me, I'll just take one because I even like this story associated with it now, right? And it's kind of fun. And so that's that book, and it's an interesting one. And at the prices that it's at now, it's interesting to me now. I don't know. I don't think this is a topic for the show today. So I'm just going to stick it in here right now because Neo said something. It doesn't exist until it's graded, right? And I want to talk about, no, I think this is fine to talk about. No, this is good. So, and we already talked about Ken Golden a little bit, but the T206, the Honus Wagner card, right? Neo did a video. Everyone talked about it. Look at Ryan's reaction, right? So this is the reaction most people are having. And I agree. Like I understand it. I'm not on either side of this thing, but there is a thought that occurred to me, and I get in trouble for thinking out loud, but I'm going to do that tonight as well. I'm not taking any sides. I'm not justifying anything, but this is an interesting notion to me. And so for anyone that doesn't know, the T206 Honus Wagner, from what little I know, is like the grail of all grails of sports cards. It's super rare just in existence, not about graded existence.
There was only 60 of them.
There you go. And like
on the pop report.
On the pop report, it's just a super rare card, period. And even the lowest grade is millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? So that's the sort of card that we're talking about. Now, the story is as this. It goes like this. Ken Golden, someone contacted him, told him that they have a T206. He went and he flew out, met with the person, and about 4 or 5 months ago, he got this card graded. Now, he asked PSA to not put the card on the population report yet. He wanted to wait to announce the discovery of this card for the show to premiere. Now the show premiered a few days ago, and they talk about this card in the show, and they're creating awareness for this card because it's going to come to auction. It's going to sell for over $5 million, right? So they want to. He wanted to not have people start poking around if they saw an additional one get added to the pop report. And that's what people are kind of upset about right now, because they're like, wait a second, you guys graded a card and you kept it off the pop? Because the what ifs are like this. And I'll get to my point. The what ifs are, what if someone was buying one or negotiating the price of one and they were using the existing pop account to negotiate their price, right? And that's very understandable. I totally understand that logic. But one thing that occurred to me, and then I'll get your guys' opinion on what I'm about to say, is that card is rare, period. Graded or ungraded, the discovery of it is the significant thing. The fact that one has been discovered is what can alter the market, not necessarily the fact that it was graded, because it's not like you're disrupting the higher end of the grade. I don't even know what the highest grade it is. This was a low grade card. It was the lowest grade. It was a PSA 1. So it's just the discovery of the card that has the impact, not necessarily the fact that it's a PSA 1. So my question is, everyone that's up in arms that this card was graded 4 months ago and they didn't create awareness of it until now to coincide with the release of the show. Well, what if Ken Golden had just decided not to tell anybody that he had the card raw, kept it raw for 4 months, and graded it now? Isn't that in essence the same exact thing?
That's what he should have done.
That's
that's what he
point,
should
though.
have done.
Understand that's what he should have done. But if you are able to think about it logically, it is the fact that the information of its existence was not made public that could have affected the market, not the fact that it was graded as a PSA 1. Right.
So I'll say that's not what really bugs me with this. I mean that I don't care so much about that side of it. I get the idea that like you could impact the values of things. The thing that bothers me with it, and it's small bothered, it's like this is on the low end of me caring about, whatever controversy CGC or PSA has. It feels like that the grading company is getting too involved in the valuations of the items at that point. Like they're starting to play a role in controlling that market. That's what I don't like, because I'm almost certain that just based on when I remember seeing it come out and checking the CGC pop report at the time, like I'm almost certain CGC held back the Giant Size X-Men 9.9 from the pop report until Vincent showed it on his Instagram for Comic Connect.
Oh.
And so like I'm almost certain that it was not out yet, even though he had it. It had been graded for like 2 or 3 weeks at that point. Cause I remember seeing the grade date, and like, cause then when it showed up on the pop report, the grade date was like 3 weeks prior, which is not how pop reports work at CGC. They get added it's each week. And so
it's pretty frequent. Yeah.
It was the same thing, and it's like, to me, it's not so much about that. It's more about just like, it feels like they're just getting too involved in that aftermarket side of things. And I just don't like it, but it's not going to cause me to go like, oh, I'm not sending it to them, or I'm not using PSA. Like, it's not like a high up on my level of concern. I just don't really like the involvement there.
I can't disagree with, I understand where you're coming from. Definitely.
Yeah. For me, I'm kind of with Ryan on like, it's by nowhere near the top of the list of like issues with PSA this year. To me, it sets an interesting precedent that they will do this. And, Ryan Hogue explained that it was a one-off situation and that it was a Wagner and, all the stuff, but it just sets, it just goes against like their normal standard operating procedure. And I'm sure that they do stuff. Maybe they don't, I don't know, but it just gave me, I just side-eyed it basically. I'm like, it just gave me like a weird, like, I just don't like this. Like, just wait and grade it. You guys have a facility in New Jersey. You could have graded it on Friday before, 4 days before, and maybe people notice. I actually had to take that, and I'm not a marketing professional. I thought it would have been more interesting if, the narrative was that it appeared on the Pop Report 4 months ago, but nobody knew who, what, when, where, or why.
That would have been cool.
And then there was this mystery around it of, where is this Wagner? Where did it come from? Whose is it? Did someone find a collection? Was it a crossover from another grading company? Whatever the case was. And then, you could have the reveal of, oh, here it is. This is the mystery Wagner that popped up 4 months ago, and then tell the whole story from there. I think was a different angle to take. Plus, I had a conversation with someone today about this, and they made an interesting point. PSA, Ken can ask for whatever he wants. It's PSA's choice to do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
If PSA just would have held firm and said, no, we're not doing that, where else is he going to grade the card? Like, he's not taking a $5 to $7 million card that he's about to sell at auction and taking it to a different grading company. He's going to grade it with PSA. So if PSA just hardlined him and was like, sorry, we can't do that, he was still going to grade it with them. It might have been different. It might have been some more hoops to jump through, but that card was going to end up in a PSA slab regardless of what they decided. If they would have said, hey, fly, take it into New Jersey on, 4 days before or whatever, we'll grade it on Saturday. It'll hit the Pop Report on Monday morning, for your show, or grade it Friday, and it'll hit the Pop Report on Monday. Though I think PSA updates their pop daily, or maybe even in real time. I don't know the specifics on that. Gem Rate would know, but I don't know. That card was going to end up in a PSA slab regardless. So why even bring that element of like just a little into the equation?
Can I just say, like, are we really surprised, that there's talks amongst?
No, we know they have backdoor deals. We know
they all have backdoor deals. They all talk about this stuff. Like, when the Superman 1 was discovered, like it wasn't sort of exactly the same, but like it was automatically going to CGC, and it's no mistake that it gets rolled out onto Heritage Auctions, and they come out with their videos and their press reports for it. And at the same time, on CGC's website, Matt Nelson has a video like showcasing, the highest graded Superman 1. And like they're creating all these marketing materials, for this notable collectible. And at the end of the day, like, I think we, as people who are really in it and as collectors, like, we feel the kind of conflict of interest, or a little bit of like the ickiness, or like, how it's off-putting with the collusion. But let's just be honest, like, all this marketing, and even going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show with the Logan Paul going on, like the press trail and all this stuff, it's really just marketing to sell to some rich casual person who they're going to try to get their attention on this card. Like, that's what the King of Collectibles show is at this point. It's like, every single item that has an episode about it is going to command a high dollar amount, and that sale is likely going to go to some just high net worth individual, and so all the companies are just working together to, drop their bags on rich people, which is the slogan for collectibles in 2025.
Wasn't that like the title for ours, like 2 videos ago or something?
It was a potential title. Title. It was a title in the running.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, very interesting stuff. I mean, we'll have to see what the Wagner ends up selling for, and I'm still very interested in what the Pokemon card Logan Paul sells for. Obviously, Ken Golden is doing a tremendous job promoting his auction house right now. He is all.
What's
over
your
the place.
guess on the Logan Paul? He's doing it. No, he's
I wouldn't be
press run of all
surprised if it
press
goes
runs.
for-
I love it. What? Yeah.
It's
What
going,
do you think?
it's going for more than what Logan Paul. It's going for more.
He's in at
I
5.3.
don't
If he tells it, he's in at 5.3 million.
I almost would feel like it's questionable if it goes for more, because I think he
it goes
paid
for more.
a lot for it.
I think they're going to make sure it goes for more.
Well, that's my
Yeah.
questionable comment
Yeah.
without saying any more than that. But
Speaking of nonsense,
the because like it's such a
Defensive bidding.
it's such a sketchy card in the first place. Like
Is
the
it?
guy
Why?
because the guy who originally had it was a 9. He submitted that card something like 10 times. Like at least it was a huge number of times that card was submitted to get a 10. And
Ryan,
so
6 no's and 1 yes is still a
exactly. I mean, but that's one of the things that gets talked about with it. And so it's just like, I mean, yeah, the grade is the grade, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, because it's the difference is him buying it, private versus auction. And auction, you've got to have people that, like, yeah, who knows, maybe the defensive bidding stuff, but the auction, you've got to have enough money out there, and that's a lot of money. Like it's
There's a lot of money, but do you think that it is not the most infamous card, on top of it being kind of like the, obviously the top, it's the grail of Pokemon cards, but this specific one, now that it is the one that is owned by Logan Paul, that's on the King Collectibles show that he wore to WrestleMania.
Yeah,
like,
he wore that card
it's
walking out in WrestleMania. Like there's
Yeah.
there's like a whole extra level of shtick on that
Yeah.
card.
Dude,
now.
it's almost cooler than the Cheeto.
almost.
Does it come with a custom gold chain, or is it just a card?
No, what is the thing that all the dealers in Pokemon won't give you?
Oh yeah,
Like
it doesn't have
card.
it doesn't have the case. Yeah.
So, hey,
We're
when
not
you
giving
guys
you
were
the card,
talking
no
about that
card.
video where that guy made like a $20,000 deal and was like, but you're not getting my slab protectors. I thought, I watched the video. I thought he was joking. I thought that was just sarcasm in the video. You're telling me the guy actually said, no, I'm keeping my colorful rubber protectors?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, those are almost in some regards, those are a collectible now.
Fascinating.
Well, it's been a tremendous year for Pokemon, like we already said, and vintage comic books. But one thing that I think we still need to talk about in our look back of 2025 is what has happened in the modern comic market. And I wanted to kind of, try to follow me on this whole setup, and I'll try to land it in a plane that is interesting for you guys. But it's interesting because if you guys remember, we started the year with the Diamond Comics distributors bankruptcy. Now, if you guys don't know, Diamond Comics Distributors was pretty much the premier comic book distributor of all the publishing companies. They, for years and years and years, they're the ones that got your Marvel and DC comic books into stores, although less so DC in recent years. They had a bankruptcy issue, Chapter 11. Now here at the end of the year, it's been an up and down whirlwind with all this stuff, but they've now filed Chapter 7, which is a complete dissolving of the company. So they're pretty much out, like how maybe CBCS is out. Similarly, but with their demise, I feel like modern comic books have done exceptionally well this year. And of course, we have all the blind bags that came out this year, which started with the Battle Beast one. If you guys remember, this stuff that came out was selling like crazy. We had an explosion of blind bags all throughout the calendar year. And we also had an explosion of titles, which Absolute Batman has been the premier title of the entire comic book market throughout this calendar year. And I kind of wanted to just sort of bring those up and see if you guys had any thoughts on sort of the modern comic book market, which I know maybe you guys aren't as into it, but maybe where I can set you up for an interesting point of conversation is the idea that modern comics have been selling extremely well. And if we look at some of the index values, modern comic books like Invincible has actually been able to kind of hold up even more so than that of Bronze Age and Silver Age. And even in the card side of things, I feel like there's a lot of conversation with it, whether it be in the Magic the Gathering market or the Pokemon market, or even maybe some in sports cards, although maybe you would disagree, Neo, that modern product is the stuff that kind of has the shininess, that has all the eyeballs, that has all the liquidity that people care about. And the vintage stuff had been falling by the wayside. And it's just sort of interesting that, in the collectible world, you would have thought that like vintage would be safer because like there's less of it and there's more people that are interested in it. But if you think about people's nostalgia and interests, it's always a moving train where it's like people who grew up reading Bronze Age, they have a fondness for that. But, the younger kids don't have a fondness for that and they're more interested in the modern product. Anyways, I'm just throwing out all these talking points and ideas to you guys to see if you have anything that you want to latch onto and take the ball and run with it. But what did you think about kind of modern comic books this year? And do you have any top level thoughts as it relates to what I just said?
I mean, my thought on this is I would still say vintage is safer because modern I look at very similar to like Pokemon cards or, modern cards where you almost like you have to move very, very quickly. It's just like spec stuff. Like you have to move very quickly if you're trying to like make money in that market. And so like even Absolute Batman, like I think it jumped up to like, it was at like $100 or so most of the year. Then it very rapidly went up to like 400, and it's coming down to, I think it's around 300. I think there was maybe even a 200, high 200 sale recently. And so, I mean, I don't know if I call it like that safe, where it's like you buy at 400 and you've already lost 25% over the course of a month. Like that's the risk that comes with that modern level of spec. But if you're the person that can buy it off the shelf, yeah, you're doing fantastic. You know, you got it for cover price and now it's a $400 book. Like you're absolutely killing it, even if it's dropped 25%. But there's a lot more gambling that's going on. And I think that's like one of the big topics for it, especially with like the blind bags. Gambling has been a huge part of all the hobbies this year, like with the blind bags, with like the vending machines, you know, Courtyard IO and GameStop's thing and all that. Like I feel like one of the big stories this year has been gambling. It's like gambling on collectibles.
What do you guys think DGen behavior?
That was my number one prediction for comic books to close out of last year, was the gambling addiction.
it's, I mean, I would say that the blind bags have been a more successful version of that than the vending machines even, you know, but it's like gambling one way or the other. But the blind bags have been, I mean, very, very popular, even if they haven't really had that much value after the fact. Like the Mark Spears stuff, like even people getting like 1 in 500 hits, the book's worth like $50 or something afterwards, but people are still buying them up. They're still loving them.
Well, that's the thing that's interesting. You know, I don't want to say that, you know, modern comics are safe or anything like that. I don't think that they're safer than vintage, but in a lot of ways, you know, we've talked about how, let's say you're a dealer, you're deciding like, okay, what pool do I want to play in? Do I want to be a guy who sells silver and Bronze Age, or do I want to be a guy who flips variant absolute Batman covers and that sort of thing? And not that I think that modern would be better or safer, but there is more of an argument to be made that maybe that's going to be more fruitful than I would have said in years past.
Absolutely. If you're taking advantage of all the platforms that are out there for you, like if you're a dealer that's using Whatnot and going on YouTube or eBay Live or all those things, doing Instagram live sales so that you can actively move your product quickly, then yes, I think that those are probably better options if your goal is like financial gain. But if you aren't doing that quick enough and you end up getting stuck with stock, then that stuff becomes quarter bin fodder, you know, pretty quick.
Totally. What do you guys think, Rob or Madhu, about any of these topics? DGen, 2025, gambling, modern product. What do you guys think about all this?
Definitely DGen 2025. You see it on the card side's way, way worse. Like they put these huge chases in every single product that everybody goes bonkers for. One of the interesting things that happened in sports cards this year from like a price appreciation standpoint is, you know, and I haven't dug into the data yet, but generally speaking, some of the biggest winners of this year price wise are like iconic cards from the late 80s, early 90s, and into the 2000s. You know, like the 89 Upper Deck Griffey is an iconic baseball card. And in a PSA 10, that card is way up. Like that card was cool. Maybe $1,500, $2,000 at the beginning of the year, and it's been flirting with 4,000 since late summer. Like,
what's the pop on a PSA 10?
Like 2,000 or 3,000, I think.
Damn,
off the top of my head.
That's awesome.
But there's like 90,000 in a PSA 9.
Oh snap!
Okay,
okay,
yeah, it's like super skewed. So stuff like that has done really, really well. Like Jordan stuff has seen a rebound. Basically all the GOATs have had a really good run the back half of this year since the summer or late spring, early summer. A lot of that stuff has taken off. Like even guys that like aren't like the greatest of all time. You know, like a Greg Maddux rookie, who was one of the best pitchers of my generation. His stuff's like way up. Like that sort of stuff has performed really, really well. I guess that would be the equivalent of like an early Bronze Age key going crazy or appreciating kind of well, but that stuff's done well. And then modern, it's just all about the hype and the gamble and the chase and the next thing and buying into a break and repacks and all that crap on steroids compared to the comic book side.
Like the thing I really like about the a little bit more, even like 80s and 90s, like the slightly more vintage sports cards is the same thing that's nice about Pokemon, is that those guys aren't spraining their ankle or tearing their ACL next week. You know, it's like you, at least you don't have that risk that's coming up, like Patrick Mahomes stuff. You know, it's like, did his stuff get just crushed with injuries and not making it to the playoffs, and versus, you know, somebody like Ken Griffey Jr., who that's not going to happen to.
Him and Derek Jeter aren't going to, I mean, they can have off the field controversy still. Like stuff could definitely happen in that regards that would affect their price. But yeah, their career is their career. It's set, you know. In sports, it's really been mostly about, like, this past year was kind of the year of Ohtani, of the modern players. Judge, to a lesser extent, in baseball, have really kind of carried the water for really most of the sports card market. Ohtani's just been massive.
Can I ask you something, Neil, about the sports cards thing? Just picking up on that before moving on, I want you to talk about all the modern stuff. You know, one thing I think is interesting is, like, you know, talking about the train of nostalgia always moving along, meaning, like, what is our 20-year nostalgia? We grew up with whatever, Ninja Turtles, or we grew up with Ken Griffey, and so we have nostalgia for it. But does that next generation have nostalgia for Ken Griffey? Part of it is like, well, it maybe doesn't really matter because nobody watched Honus Wagner playing baseball, but everyone is willing to pay millions for Honus Wagner. So there are cards that just sort of are, you know, certain grails that in the community that everyone just accepts. Are there new players like Ken Griffey or whoever that it's sort of like people don't even care about the player? They're just sort of like, it's just a trophy to, like, get this thing. Like, the kids just want to get it because it has a status symbol to it. Is that developing at all in sports cards?
I think that's the tricky part, is we don't know. Like, we don't know who this era's Ken Griffey Jr. is until the era is over, because a lot could change. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Mike Trout was going to be that guy until he wasn't. You know, if you would have said right at the early days of the pandemic, who's like the next guy that's like a no-brainer, like you're never going to lose money, everyone would have said Trout. And then injuries started piling up. You know, the Angels suck. Like, he's never had an iconic moment in his career to this point. And now here we are a few years later. You know, he's playing 75% of the season. His numbers are way down, and his career looks like it's on a completely different track than what it was. He was still amazing for the bulk of his career, but now all of a sudden he's not going to hit those same benchmarks that people thought that he was going to hit as his career slows down now. And I think that's the perfect example of you really don't know until the story is completely written. And his story was mostly written, but it's not quite there yet. Like, even Ohtani now, as amazing as he is and all the crazy stuff that he's done, has established himself to some point. He's probably the closest, because he also has the Asian market influence, the hitting pitching thing. Like, he is kind of truly a 101 that even if he stopped playing tomorrow, he would still have, like, nostalgia value, I think, in 20, 30 years.
Well, he's already cemented himself as a Hall of Fame player, that's for sure.
Yeah, but so is Trout, though. But there's Hall of Fame players, and then there's like a level beyond that. And Griffey is a good example of that, because he's a Hall of Fame player, but he never won a World Series. He doesn't singly own any one particular record, but he was the athlete of that generation. You know, the age that most of us are in our late 30s, early 40s. Like, you grew up on Griffey. Like, he had the video game, he had the shoes. You know, you wanted all the stuff. And
it doesn't matter. I mean, I guess I'm asking this though. Do you think that the people who are buying Griffey now, like, when I go to, you know, the sports card show and I see, like, the 15-year-old, is the 15-year-old like, yeah, dude, I want to get that Griffey, because they just know it as, like, a card that's a key card?
I think there's, like, a track that you kind of go on when you first enter a space of, you usually get introduced on the new stuff. And you chase it, you cut your teeth on it. You want to buy the players that you're watching on TV. And then as you kind of grow older or get more experience in the space and you start to appreciate the older stuff, a certain percentage of those people are just always going to stay modern or just get burned out and leave. And the ones that stick around, I think you slowly start filtering backwards more and more.
It's like your whiteboard, Mickey, for comic collectors.
Yeah, it's the same concept.
Yeah.
I think if like an item's cool enough, collected enough, the energy of the item will speak to a younger collector, even if the emotional connection wasn't established in real time.
That's what I'm wondering, Manu. But shout out to David Schneider once again for the $4.99. Who this is to Neo, but I think Manu, you should weigh in on this as well. Neo, if you were to invest in Marvel Metal, any eras, PMGs? Question mark.
I don't know that I would invest in any Marvel card property.
Hey.
Invest is a strong
What kind
word.
of fool would do that?
Buy what you like. I mean, there's PMGs, but there's a lot of other insert sets that don't get a lot of love from that particular era, even from like retro in general, that are probably lower print run and more rare, that are pretty cool. But you just
I
got
was
to do
going
the
to try to
homework on
sell
it.
a card on
So
stream.
say we'll see some shilling, like right
I
down.
won't.
Here it comes. Here it
I
comes.
know. I always.
What were you going to pump? What were you going to pump?
But if you guys don't have one of these, go get one now because the prices are going up. See, no one even knows what it is. See, that's the good stuff. All right, that's Spawn's
That is the
first
good stuff.
appearance ever in color on anything. It's a VHS. It's called Stan Lee Presents the Greats, and it's an
Now
interview
we're
with
guy
Tom
over here
McFarlane.
talking
You
about
can't even watch it
Something.
because no one's got a
Did you guys
VHS.
you heard it here first? VHS 2026.
That is anyway. And I invested a lot into this card, and I did really well with this card. This is Venom's first card, 1989. Todd McFarlane, Venom. In any case, what were we talking about? We were talking about. You said you'd give me a moment to talk about the modern stuff.
The modern market. I mean, I talked about, Diamond kind of folded, but yet modern product actually did really well. Absolute Batman sold like crazy. All these blind bags sold like crazy. And, I just was wondering if you had, any commentary on modern comic books, but if not modern comic books, I think it's interesting to talk about the idea that like modern product gets a lot more eyeballs. And there's been conversation of how like people are not just jumping into vintage. Like I saw these conversations in the Magic the Gathering community, where, for instance, where people are buying the modern Magic stuff, but they're not going to the alpha sets and things of that nature. But anyways, you can pick it up with modern Marvel cards versus like nobody is actually going to Don Russ. I mean, I know that they are, but
No,
like, you know
Don,
what I mean?
Don Russ is on fire.
But it would be that idea,
Find
right?
vintage
It would be
Magic
that
right
idea.
here. Diving into vintage Magic.
But yeah,
here's
Manu,
I did this for Neo. Neo still didn't go get one. Neo, it's a pop 3 now. You could get one for like $150. Go grab one. Swag said, I'm out of here.
I don't buy one.
He's had enough. He's had enough of the shilling of these cards.
I gotta wait. I gotta wait for the pump to be over. You're pumping right now.
I'm gonna show cards in a second, but I gotta bring Manu into the conversation. I'm going to shill my card choice in a second, but Manu, why don't you kind of talk about
I don't have much to say about the modern, and then we'll have some more fun with this card conversation real quick. But blind bags, I'm not a participant. I've observed. I'm glad people are having fun. Those things are doing well for people. There's all I have to say about that. The modern books, though, like I love what the Absolute series, the effect it's had, and how everyone's talking about DC. And it was my introduction to the artist Dragotta, and perhaps he was illustrious before or whatever. I don't know. This was my introduction to him. I thought some of the stuff was cool, but it was when I saw issue number 13. I probably missed a bunch of covers, but when I became invested, not financially, but like became very interested, is when I saw. I just pulled it up too. What was it? Issue number 13, Catwoman crouching, like the helmet version of Catwoman.
Yeah.
And I loved that cover, right? So I was at a comic book store. I saw like the 1 in 20 or the 1 in 25 on the wall. It was like $20. Shout out Blue Moon Comics in San Rafael. I went and grabbed. I just said, I'll take that because it looked so good, right? So that was the effect of that series getting my attention, and then the cover speaking to me. And I rarely do cover buys these days for modern books because they just sit around, quite frankly. It's not like, I'm not going to slab it or anything, but I'll tell you what happened funny is the other day on eBay, a 9.9 of that popped up for like literally, it was only $1.99 or best offer, right? And I didn't buy it. I was like, what am I going to do with it? I'm just going to have it. I'm going to post it on my story. It's not even going to make the feed. And then it's going to just sit in a box, right? So like, do I think it's an investment? Who knows? It's a 9.9, but probably not. I could make smarter investments, more lucrative opportunities out here. It's not that much money, but whatever. I just put a heart on it. And not so much later, it was sold. Now, it sold for an offer, and I didn't do so much as research what it sold for. Obviously, it's a few clicks I could have found out. But regardless, $199 was already affordable. Like anyone that likes the cover and it's a 9.9 can grab it, but someone got it for even less. But I had regret instantly when it was in my ended column. I was like, oh, I didn't buy that book for $200 and I could have made an offer. And so I went to the CGC census to check. And I think there were, am I wrong? There were already a few 9.9s, but it's a modern book. So I imagine more 9.9s are going to happen. And I looked at that guy's submission. He had a bunch of 9.8s that came out of that submission as well. Anyway, sorry, that went longer than I anticipated, meaning the modern stuff got my attention to the point where I did buy a couple of covers because they were really cool. And I like what's happening in the modern market. I like this reawakening of enthusiasm, and people are like specking again. And even though it usually doesn't work out, it's still fun to see that energy and excitement in the market.
I mean,
What's cool about that? You made me think about one thing. Sorry, let me squeeze in, Ryan. Like how you were talking about how, oh yeah, you love that art piece. Like you got in on Dragoda. And I didn't really bring this up, but we did talk about how, OA for Zeta exploded this year, but OA in general had a massive year. And more specifically to what you're getting at, it is interesting that like when you went to Collector Summit, the sort of golden age collector or the more vintage collector, all of a sudden now they're a little more interested in like a Peach Momoko OA, or they're a little more interested in like buying an Absolute Batman OA. And there's kind of been this like synergy of like modern art, at least being interested to like vintage collectors. And that could be a big story and a big positive of what the modern comic book market has done for even the vintage market in sort of an indirect way. But
absolutely agree. And no,
I mean, kind of my thought on that one, just from what you had just said, I've thought it's just really interesting for myself is that the original art that I've bought even the oldest one is from the 2000s. Like everything I bought has been modern stuff. And I'm largely like my PC is all golden age other than the art, and all the art is modern. And I don't know why. It's just like, that's what I'm drawn to with the art. And I think it's because I'm generally drawn to rarity. And with Golden Age, I get rarity in comics. With art, you're rare no matter what era you're in when it's an individual piece. And I actually like the art style of modern stuff more than older stuff. I do like some of the artists, in the Golden Age and that kind of thing. But I mean, visually, like I really like some of the modern stuff. Like I've got like Hughes and I've got Wrightson and I've got some other things, and I really like those pieces. And I think that's, the rarity of the art has allowed me to go for something that's more modern that I wouldn't normally go to with comics. But I don't remember what the other thing I was going to talk about was. So I thought I'll comment on
no, but no, you're absolutely right. In modern stuff, to find the scarcity, it's kind of the art, right? It's not even scarce in high grade. They're all 9.8s. Speaking of Absolute Batman, last time I looked was probably 3 weeks ago, and there was like 3,200 9.8s. I'd imagine there's probably a couple hundred more of those on there now, So it's not grade scarcity. It's completely demand driven, but the original art, come on, if the demand is there for the book and there's 4,000 9.8s, that art's through the roof because it's desirable and there's only one. So you're the king if you have the art.
And now I remember my only, like, for people who are like specking on the Absolute Batman stuff right now, the only thing I would be like a little concerned about is like another book that I would say was comparable or run that was comparable was Immortal Hulk. Immortal Hulk was super popular, and it is now right back down. And it had,
don't say that, as I recently got a collection that had Immortal Hulk in it, and I need to sell that run. So Immortal Hulk to the moon. We are pumping that up.
No, and whoever buys it from you is buying it after the initial spike, which means they're actually doing the right job, the right thing, buying it now.
But I'm like those also had incredible cover. I mean, it was like Alex Ross, I think, did most of them or a lot of them. Yeah. And so it's like incredible cover art too and all that. And so just one of those things to be aware of. That's one of those gambles that comes with the moderns. Like once the 9.8s start getting out there's going to be a ton of them. And then you start saturating demand. But I know that's not really the point when you're buying this. Like it's the meme, right? Like you're buying it to be part of that moment.
Sure.
That thing that's happening. And so that's why it's like sometimes when we say like, oh, why don't you just wait? It'll be cheaper 6 months from now. It's like, yeah, but I don't want it then. It's like I want it now.
You want to be in the party. You want to join the club,
Yep.
And $300 to $400, even if that goes against you later and it turns into a $150 book for, a lot of people, that's not going to ruin their life. It's fine, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that we can kind of start to wind it down, but I did want to talk about my one hot spec that I had this year in the trading card world. And I am so excited about the League of Legends Rift-bound card set, guys. I just want to point out that ever since I said on this show that you should keep your eye on this set, the sealed boxes have gone up by 66%.
It's all
So
you,
I'm just
Swag.
saying
No?
this has been a huge thing. And jokes aside, memes aside, I'm actually pretty excited about it because one, I know League of Legends really well, and two, like I don't have a card thing that I'm like super invested in. I mean, I like Magic the Gathering, but like a new card product that is not already known. But League of Legends, I could definitely see myself buying all
Do
their
you have a
Secret
wall
Prime.
of those off screen? Like just like right over here. There's
Yeah,
like
until you get the shelves of wax behind you, you're not really serious.
I have them in the back. I'll disclose, I have 3 sealed boxes of this thing that I was able to pick up, when it came out. But in February, they have their next set. And so I'm probably going to go pretty hard on that.
Another thing, Swag, that I want to congratulate you. I'm sure everyone wants to congratulate you because I haven't had a chance to speak to you about this. But an original Dark Hawk cover is in your collection now, my man. Congratulations.
Oh, he's got it right there.
Nice. Look at that. What issue was it? 26? What was it?
26.
26. Very cool,
Lucky
man.
number 26.
That's too cool.
Appreciate that. Well, gentlemen, are there any other things that I feel like we got to touch on before 2025 is out? Because this is going to be the last time that we will all be together on stream during the Ungraded Truth to talk about 2025 topics. Was there anything that we forgot to hit on?
2025 doesn't feel like a hard end, and it just like we're just about to cruise into 26, and all of these sort of things that don't have bows on them are going to unravel, or the loose ends are going to get cut into 2026. Like, I don't know if there's any other there's plenty of things that have happened. I don't know if there's any other topics for us to touch on this evening, but I'm just really excited to see what shakes out of 2026. Like, I think every grading company is going to make some advancements. I think there's going to be some major announcements. I think CGC's got something coming. I think we're going to hear more about CBCS. And I personally, for me, right at the beginning of the year, for the first time ever, I'm actually sending books to Heritage. I'm going to be dropping them off in person. And it's the first time I've ever sent anything to a large auction. So the year's going to take a bit of a new flavor in my selling sort of experiences for me as well. So like, I just think 2026 is going to be like a really robust and energized collecting year. And I look forward to, it's going to feel like a month from now when we do the 2026 year end review, but I look forward to doing that and seeing what all kind of transpired.
I mean, I'll say, like, I always kind of hope for no scandals. Like, I mean, I know scandals are great for content, but generally, like, I would rather there not be scandals and I could just talk about something else, because I don't know. Like, I'd rather there not be people fighting and arguing about some of this type of stuff. Just grade this stuff and move on, and we can talk about some other topic. But we know it's going to happen. Like, it's going to happen. There's going to be something.
You know what's interesting about that, Ryan, is I feel like a lot of people say, like, it's the joke that content creators love it when there's like a scandal, or like love to talk about something negative. And it is true in the sense that, like, yes, for that one video, you're going to get a pop if it's like a face palm, scandal, scam, stolen cards, stolen comic books, CGC, corruption, whatever. But in general, over the long run, like, when you're a collectible that's like thriving, like people are like, oh, it's buying, and like all this product is selling, and everything's going up, and like, oh my God, this record sale, that's actually the most beneficial thing for people who make content. Because
exactly,
like,
that's when Pokemon hasn't had a scandal, and it's killing it, like,
until the PSA, until the PSA 9s magically became 10s, which we talked about, last show. But yeah, no, you're so right. I mean, it's just like when people are excited about that collectible, that's really the golden times.
Yep.
Speak for
What about you,
yourself.
Rob?
December has been absolutely wild in the content scene on the card side. It's been
Neo wants those scandals. He's
since the
cashing
shorting,
in.
since the defensive bidding thing, it has been a wild ride the last 30 to 45 days of just one thing after another. More so on the card side than the comic book side, but
I mean, I'll agree. Like, it makes it easy to make content. Like when you've got a story, you're just like, I just have to click play or click record, and it's. But I would rather it not happen. Ideally, I'd rather talk about something positive.
But what about you, Rob? Any other kind of big little year-end stories here? Things you want to touch on that happened this year?
I think we hit the big stuff on the comic side. I think the grading shakeup, I think, is the number one overall story. From if you had to put like one thing on it, like PSA entering, like that alone would have already been the number one story, and then you factor in this Beckett / CBCS thing to close out the year. It just like adds even more fuel to that fire. But I definitely think the grading landscape kind of having a little bit of a shakeup. And I think the interesting thing to watch heading into 2026 is what are the ripple effects of that? Because I don't think we've really seen that yet. Like this is really just the tip of the iceberg. How does that PSA census look this time next year when we're sitting here? We'll start to get like spoilers. We talked about it on my live stream, Swags, when the Beckett sale went down, when you were on with Ryan from Gemrate. Like he's going to start tracking that stuff on his reports. So we'll start to get like real-time data on that. I don't know if he's going to do weekly, daily, monthly, what his plan is, but probably pretty soon we're going to start to see that stuff filter over like we get on the card side. So we're going to see in real time, what impacts PSA being in the market actually has on CGC specifically.
Well, I did actually think about one last little topic that we could just have as a bonus here to write it down. But we had two pretty big movies come out this last year. Superman, the James Gunn one that made $616 million, which depending on if you're a glass half full or glass half empty person, that was a pretty successful box office for them. And similarly, we had the Fantastic Four movie that came out with $521 million. Next year, we have Avengers Doomsday. And I guess, it was an interesting year for kind of cultural movies and stuff. And I don't know. I'm so curious to see what happens with comics and the, Marvel culture with that Avengers Doomsday movie. I think that's going to be a big deal coming into next year. And just wanted to throw that out there.
I mean, kind of like you had said this year, like if Fantastic Four flops, like it's just the end of the MCU. Like it didn't flop, it did fine, but like if Avengers Doomsday flops, oh my God, like I don't know where they go.
Yeah, I'm selling my entire back wall for One Piece.
Good move.
Is there any world where that could even flop? Like they already got the Chris Evans trailer out there, like Downey's in it. Like I just feel like there's no way.
It depends on
the only reason it flops is if there just
flop.
isn't the demand for people to see it. Like because it in theory has everything going for it, but man.
I mean, I guess the movie could be bad, but they're probably still going to sell 1 billion tickets to it.
At least opening.
I think it's going to do pretty well because like there's a.
I'm predicting over 1 billion.
About it.
I think over 1 billion. I think.
Can we get a Spawn movie, please?
Never. He will never do it.
He was number 5.
Will never do it.
Todd McFarlane
on the
wants to direct it.
Number 5 on the eBay comic book searches. Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman.
It'll get announced the day after your auction ends on Heritage.
Stop it. Stop it. I'm hearing rumors now. Everyone's spec on Spawn.
Because Todd's going to buy your book for cheap, then he's going to announce it and flip it, make like 10 grand. That's what he needs.
Yeah, exactly right. Oh man. But it's been a fun year, guys.
A fun year indeed. And a fun show at that. Everybody, I want to say thank you again for hanging out with us this evening. I hope you guys all had a wonderful holiday season. I hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's. And I would ask that you guys, before the year is out, head over to the Ungraded Truth YouTube channel. We're currently at 850 subscribers. We need to get to 1,000 so that we can start.
Get us over 1,000 by the new year.
Get us over 1,000 by the new year. All kinds of goodies and giveaways. It's going to be a bountiful giveaway season if we get there. And similarly, we are also now on Spotify. If you're not into the YouTube thing, which I think most people who are watching us right now are probably into the YouTube thing, but if you're not, you want to have us on the background. Maybe you're a runner. Maybe you like doing workouts. Maybe you like listening to, stuff in the side when you're cleaning up the house or bagging and boarding, and you're a podcast person. Hop on over to the Spotify edition. We got to get some reviews over there. Got to get that thing rolling because we are the #1 collectible show in the universe. Gentlemen, thank you again for hanging out this evening. And ladies and gentlemen in the chat, we'll see you all in 2026. Peace out. Detective Comics set a record for 1.8 million. Nobody really cares.
Who are annoyed that people are asking them questions, is this book banned? That question didn't exist a year ago.
Somebody's submitting like 25 vintage books and getting 15 9.9s.
We always think, how can it ever get crazier? And then it always does.